Okay, I think we're ready when you are.
I'm just checking names to see if we're all, at least a quorum is here. Looks like we're pretty close. Okay. There's the last one trying to come in now. That's what I was looking for. Well, good evening, everyone. This is a special town council meeting and continued public hearings, May 4th, 2022. This meeting will be an electronic meeting with no anchor site location. Call the meeting to order and take the roll. Carol Hazelton.
Here.
Thank you. Chris Byer.
Here.
Thank you, Chris. Sherry Jacobs.
Here.
Bob Nadelberg. Bob Nadelberg, unmute and state that you're here, please. Ralph Severini.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Hey, Phil,
Bob
it's Bob.
Nadelberg.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm having technical difficulties. I apologize.
Okay. Thank you. Full council is present. So tonight is a continued public hearing items for discussion and possible approval of an amendment of the official town of Hideout zoning map to modify zoning to be aligned with what they're proposing for development, as well as the discussion and possible approval of a master development agreement regarding the boulders at Hideout. We have, yes, I'd like to start, I guess, Thomas, if you want to take us through your piece of the puzzle, I guess. Then we'll have Polly and Tim talk about anything else that they want to mention, and then we can go through the actual NDAs as well.
Sure, we can do that. Okay, Mayor, what I can do is, do you want me to walk you through my staff report? I mean, I had initially thought about maybe trying to go through it maybe item by item, just to make it a little bit easier for council, if that works. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Is that the way your staff report is organized, or?
Yes.
Okay, then that's fine.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah, let me just give you a few quick updates. And so you're on the right page. As we noted in the staff report, the applicants, they continue to prepare requested materials for review by town council. Some things are kind of coming in as they're prepared. Some things are not yet prepared, and we're working with the applicants on those documents. And so we think of today as an opportunity to basically review the project. And if you all have any questions, let us know, and or to give direction. There's a number of kind of higher level items that I think that we want to just make sure that council's aware of, and we want to have that dialogue with the applicants. And so it's also worth mentioning that they did hold an open house on April 27th. They introduced the project to the community and outside parties. I think there was pretty good attendance. Obviously, Todd and McKay are on tonight, and they can give us numbers, but I bet it was maybe 30 to 50 people attended. And so it was well attended on the 27th of April. We are still working to finalize the community survey to send out at the request of council at the last meeting. So I think that is being finalized today, and hopefully will go out to SurveyMonkey by the end of this week so that we can get kind of general planning input. It's not specific to this project, but it's just general planning input with regard to the future direction of land use within the community. I think that tonight, I just made a note here that I think it would be important for us to make sure that we provide the community a timeline for future meetings. I think that we're on for the 12th of May at the next regularly scheduled meeting. But I think that if there is a change to that, if possible, we should try to resolve that tonight and make sure that the public is aware of that so that they don't get confused when the next meetings are. The only other thing I had on the kind of update list was that the applicants did prepare a 3D model. They presented it at the open house on April 27th up at the Boulders Lodge. And if we want, they could go through that tonight. I don't know if you want to do that first, because that does give a pretty good sense of land use and layout. I'm looking for Todd and McKay on here. McKay, are you on? Did you want to go through, Mayor, did you want to go through that 3D model before I jump into the staff report, which is really kind of a reactive and need for responses?
Thomas, we're
I guess,
both on.
There you are, Todd.
Go ahead.
We have
Go ahead,
a
Mayor.
whole lot of, sorry, Thomas. I think, we have a lot of things that we've identified already that we want to talk about. So if the model helps us to talk about them, then that's fine in your opinion, then we can look at that.
Okay, I'm fine jumping in if you would prefer to do that. Mayor, if you don't mind going to the next page and maybe zooming in on that map. I mean, maybe you want to leave those numbers there. What we tried to do is prepare a map of the existing subdivisions and the approvals and the entitlements within the community. And so this is kind of an outline of that. The council had asked for kind of this larger overview, and so we wanted to provide that. So what you see in front of you is really what has been approved and entitled in the community to date. And this doesn't include the 2019-2020 annexation project, and it doesn't include the Boulders project. But what it does give you an idea of is the total Hideout Canyon MDA entitlements, as well as Deer Waters, Deer Springs, Lakeview, and Claim. Deer Waters may be a few units off. There were some units deducted at the request of council, and I think it went from about 119 to 110, but it's right around that number. That's why you see the approximation there. But you can see that overall what has been entitled is about 2,500 units. If you kind of go to that map below, you can start to get a sense of kind of the spatial approvals of the developments in the community. You can see, of course, to the north, we've got the more dense developments that are the more recent developments, the Deer Springs, Deer Waters, Lakeview, those are up in that area. And then if you go down into the overall kind of the black line surrounds the Hideout Canyon MDA, you'll see what's been approved in terms of the various phases of Hideout Canyon, Shoreline, Golden Eagle, Soaring Hawk, etc. If you, at the far left, we've included that the annexation proposal that was dated 2019-2020. You can get a sense of where that is and the scale of what that was. That was about 350 acres, 625 units of
That's not
residential.
where it is, I don't believe.
It may be a little bit further to the north of that, but roughly
Further to the north.
a little bit north. But roughly that's where it is, and you can start to get a sense of
On the other side, as well, on the other side of Browns Canyon. So.
okay. And you can get a sense of the 350 acres, the 625 units, almost 100,000 square feet of commercial. Some of you may remember working through that, but I just wanted to put that in here so that you had an understanding of one, proximity, and two, what was posed there. You can also see at the bottom right is the proposed Boulders. That's 112 acres, about 610 units of residential. That may be slightly decreasing. Todd and Mikhail speak to that tonight. And some commercial within a hotel and a B&B. But that just kind of gives you a sense. As you can see from this, without any further annexation, this is, we're almost at entitled build out for the community. up at the top right, just south of Deer Springs, you can see that little red area, town-owned land. That's an approximation of some land that was deeded to the community by Nate. And there's maybe 8, 9, 10 acres that may offer some development opportunities for commercial development. So again, the intent of this map was just to give you some spatial recognition of what has been proposed and or entitled in the community. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I know a few of you had asked for, kind of give me the overall visual. This is that overall visual. And if not, go ahead. And if there aren't any questions on that, again, that's just to give you a spatial analysis, kind of a visual analysis of what's entitled in the community. We can go down to the staff report. Again, the intent of this staff report was to not necessarily get into the weeds just yet, but it was to kind of walk us through a few of the higher altitude items that the town council had asked for at the last meeting. They had asked for a better understanding and or detailed input. And so Jan may be able to help me here a little bit. Number one is the fiscal analysis. There was a fiscal analysis prepared by the applicants at the last meeting, and they've updated that at the request of council to include expenses, as well as revenues. And so I think that may have just been completed today. And so I may turn this over to Jan and or McKay or Todd to kind of walk through this. And I think you may have the more up-to-date version of this.
Thanks, Thomas. And yes, we did meet as a EDC and evaluate an independent financial analysis of the project. And actually, Ralph has the spreadsheet and has agreed to give us an update on the high-level view of the financial benefits.
So what, Jan, so am I looking for something to open or?
I believe, Ralph, do you have that spreadsheet available?
I have the spread. Yeah, I have the spreadsheet. What I as we've been talking here, I just put together a kind of a one slide summary of what the analysis means as best as we can put it together at this point. It's, the spreadsheets are exhaustive. There's multi sheets inside the spreadsheets. Obviously there's formulas in various cells to reflect property taxes, sales tax. But I thought I'd just give you a quick summary. Does that make sense, Mayor? And sorry.
So that's fine, Ralph. I'll let you present.
Yeah, I just need to share my screen here. So. Can you see a PowerPoint slide coming up?
We can.
Yep.
Okay, well then I'll just try to, whoops, let's see, we need to flip this. There we go. So the analysis really that Rob Sant, with an extensive set of spreadsheets that we kind of poured through this afternoon, indicates that in year 6, so it's going to take 5 years for this project to roll out to be, fully sold, or more or less fully sold, and so the analysis really should begin in around year 6 to get the roll for the next 15 years after that. So roughly in year 6. We get about $1,041,000. So think $1 million in additional taxes to Hideout. Of that million, about 32% is in property tax, 23% in sales tax, and 40% in transient room tax. We just passed the the room tax. So I don't think that was included in some of the initial analysis, but you can correct me on that one. But in any case, 1, 2, and 3 is about 95% of the additional taxes we would expect to get out of that, out of that million. And again, if you look at the numbers, almost 2/3 come from the sales and transient room tax. So we need to do one thing we were trying to drill into was the calculations, the formulas. How did we come to those conclusions? And Rob was using various factors like 51% room occupancy over the life of a year of the condotel, and the fact that he used some figures that he got from local areas. So a lot of stuff poured into his analysis, and there are obviously some clear assumptions along that line, because sales and transient room tax really are the key figures here, and I'll tell you why. So the estimated cost that Rob came up with to maintain boulders for the town, so the increase in roads and the maintenance that we would take on, he estimated about $380,000 a year. And that's kind of standard going through the 20-year analysis. And so, in year 6 and in the ensuing years, leaves about $660,000 net increase of net revenue to the town. So after expenses, assuming we get there, obviously there are assumptions built into this, we would get about $660,000. So what does that mean for the town? In the way I was thinking about it, and Rob did this next bullet here, roughly $500,000 in additional taxes for Hideout will cost a homeowner with $1 million assessed home. This is, so a home that's worth about 1.8 million market with the 45% discount, that equates to $1 million assessment, be about $1,357 a year. That, these are estimates, but necessarily that's what it would cost the taxpayers in the town, with $1 million for every $1 million assessed value that they have, or portion thereof, about $1,350, and it could go up, could go down from there, but that's a rough figure. So another way to look at it,
sorry, Ralph, across how
Yeah.
many units is that based?
that's based upon what we have currently in town, as far as I know. You
Okay.
mean, is it? Yeah. So if
Yeah.
you look at what we're collecting now in our budget,
We're talking about 6 years out here, and 6 years out, we're gonna have more houses,
correct?
so.
Will that
theory.
number go down? It depends. It may. Where are we at, Mayor? At this point, we're at. We've got a build out of about 2,400 homes. Are we at 1,500? So we're at 2/3. So it might change by 1/3 in a direction.
We're at about 500. We're about 550 units right now, Ralph.
Oh, I thought we were higher than that.
Nope.
No, and those include the
And
homes
then of course,
at the apartments. So really the build out so far has been 300 and some odd, 380 maybe. In that
Yeah,
area.
that's good.
370, yeah.
Okay, well, so that's a follow-up analysis that I think should be done. I don't know if Rob did that. We didn't talk about that today. So if Hideout totally got built out with, say, 2,200 homes, and on top we'd have another say 500, 600 here, what would that look like in terms of that additional tax? These are rough estimates, but let's take it another way. So that's based upon current scenario. Another one would be $650,000 today is about 1/3 of our budget. So if we look at, we're about 1.6, but we're going to grow to 2 million pretty soon. So, roughly about it's equivalent to about 1/3 of our budget. And just as importantly, I was looking at, our developer fees are running, last year they ran $750. I think, I think we're coming a little bit lower this year, obviously for all kinds of economic reasons, but, so 650 is roughly about 88-90% of the fees, which we'd have to replace in 5 years when we start curtailing the developer's fees, because that's, assuming that we continue to build out at the rate that we've been building out. So, those are the equivalents that I came up with, at least. That kind of made sense out of what is this figure? What does it relate to in terms of additional taxes? And maybe it will lower, maybe with more homes, then we can spread the dollar amount, as you just said, when we fully build out the town, to what 500,000 or $1 million might be in terms of additional taxes. So I'll stop there, see if there's any questions.
I think it's important to recognize that our developer fees are not a revenue stream. They are, offsetting costs associated that the town does associated with development. So if development stops, a lot of the costs associated with the development stops. We're not doing inspections on houses that are already built. We're not, we're not doing testing on geotesting and all that kind of stuff. So I think, as you guys look at the model, I think it's fair to say that a good portion of that 650K of the developer fees should be a variable based on demand. So we have to, if we didn't have any development, then some of the staff that's dedicated to development would probably not be needed as well. Other things could potentially consume them, like, additional road maintenance and additional snow plowing and those kinds of things, because we're getting more road. But I think it's critical that we recognize that the development fees are not revenue streams in the direct sense.
That's correct, Mayor. And actually, legally, they are not their fees are meant to be directly related to the cost of the permits.
Exactly.
So if I understand that correctly, the development fees stop when the building stops, whereas the transient room tax and the sales tax, property tax go on in perpetuity.
Correct.
Yep. That's the way the analysis was done. Actually, it grows a little bit over, so those two will actually grow a little bit based upon, just new room costs over time, but not super significant. I'd say we're still in the same ratios according to the spreadsheet, but those will grow. Whereas the property tax was assumed fairly steady through the 20-year period, because even if the property tax goes up, your cost of operation and maintenance goes up. So it's kind of in a relative stable ratio.
The other thing I would add, if you don't mind, is that as the unit count goes up, meaning as Hideout continues to develop and you add more homes, the cost to maintain, it was going to go up commensurate with that growth, right? So like if you have $380,000 to maintain the roads within the boulders, your cost per unit is actually going to be higher as you grow, since our cost per unit is in effect lower. We have more high densities, it's a lower, we have more units per linear foot of road. And so my point is that it's going to grow. If it's $380K for 600 units, it's probably going to be more than that for 600 units as you grow throughout the town.
Hey Ralph, this is Chris. Did that financial analysis that Rob provided get sent to the council?
I don't think so. Jan,
Not yet, Chris.
All right, so we're looking at a summary. This is like the Cliff Notes. This is this is Ralph's analysis that he's trying to give us the kind of the high level overview. But, I, not having details in front of me, what went into the estimated hideout cost to maintain boulders to get to the 380,000? Was that vetted with anybody in Public Works? What were the assumptions? Where is that information?
All good questions, Chris. That's why I was tossing some of my comments in as well. I'm seeing this for the first time as well.
Okay, well, we're seeing it for the first time now. So Ralph, you want to just tell us, do you have conclusions that you want to share with us? Or is this just a way of introducing the detailed financial analysis to us so we're not, overwhelmed by it when we get it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in the spreadsheet. Chris, you just brought up a good one, and that is, we really need to drill into, again, how the sales tax is calculated, estimated, and the transient room tax, because those are critical items. They make up 63% of the additional taxes. So any of the assumptions and any of the formulas should be reviewable. And I certainly didn't have time. None of us on the call today at 3 o'clock had time to go through that. So it was a drill into the spreadsheet, but all of us should be taking a closer look at this. Rob's going to come back on next Thursday to provide it's his sheet, it's his analysis. And I think it's our opportunity then, once we look at the spreadsheet, maybe uncovering, some of the formulas that might be in a cell that we might want to look at within that spreadsheet. Those are all things we didn't have a chance to do today. So these are more summary figures across a multitude of spreadsheets that he built into one big spreadsheet. So in fact, maybe I'll just share what this looks like, if that makes sense, Chris, and then we should distribute this.
For sure. So I heard you make an assumption. This is back on the agenda for next Thursday. Is that true?
Well, Rob said he was attending, so I don't know. That's a good question. That's what we were talking about today, Jan. So
we'll decide tonight at the end, but that's currently what we're projecting, is that we would have, further update at the standard meeting, but we'll decide that by the end of this evening, Chris.
Okay, super, thanks.
Hey, Chris, can you see the spreadsheet?
We can run.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can see there's sub spreadsheets in here from property tax, sales tax, franchise expenses, etc. I just pulled up the one where, it's kind of the central sheet, the yearly cost benefit summary. And you can see where call it year 6, where it starts leveling out after that. Those are the numbers that I pulled here. And, the 380, the 1,041,000, and then the net of about 660. So, and then thereafter. Now, this sheet is built from, all these other sheets, like expenses, franchise tax, sales tax, property tax calculations, then kind of rolls into this yearly cost benefit. And I think it's, it's relevant to us that we continue to ask Rob whatever, questions we have in regards to assumptions, calculations, and formulas.
Okay, thank you, Ralph.
Yep.
And so, Mr.
Thanks.
Mayor, we have yet to see it also. So
Thanks to the team for continuing to work in this space. We appreciate that very much. And we still got a little bit more work to do to get settled on. So I think one thing that Jan, I would ask is a single page with the key assumptions behind the model. Or Ralph, when you get back to the group again, so it's based on so many homes, this growth rate, whatever the things you've been hearing tonight.
Yeah, that makes sense. We need to pull this, unravel it a little bit more so that we're all comfortable with, certainly the big numbers here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Let's stop. I'm going to stop your sharing and go back to the Tom's report, if that's okay.
Okay. Mayor, I thought the second item that we should walk through is the commercial development. And this is intended to make sure that there's an understanding of the amount of and the timing of commercial. And so if you see, yep, you're right, lined up. If you see the proposed amount of commercial is about 20,000 square feet, you can see that it's laid out at about 4,000 square feet for a restaurant in the hotel and about 4,000 square feet in the hotel for retail and about 4,000 square feet in the renovated B&B, the house for a restaurant cafe. The proposed clubhouse would have about 2,000 square feet, maybe sundry shop, maybe coffee shop, and then there's a proposed retail pad at 2,500 square feet. On top of this is the recommended additional commercial square feet in the big house condos. It may be 2 or 3 of them, maybe 2 or 3,000, maybe 4,000 square feet in 2 or 3 of the large condos on the first floor. So right now, the way it's been proposed is that the hotel, if the applicants couldn't get a hotel built on the land, that land would remain vacant. Nothing would be built on that land. And so I think the question for council is, are you comfortable with that? Because I know that there's been a significant amount of discussion with regard to sales tax revenue, timing, et cetera. And so is there a timeline that the council wants to associate with that land and or a minimum level of hotel that they want included in the MDA? Right now, we don't have anything in there. And then the second question is with regard to the hotel land. If it didn't go to a hotel, is there a desire that maybe the town could intervene, have the land given to them, deeded to them, dedicated to them, sold to them for a certain amount of property so that we could search out a hotel? And then the second question, somewhat related to this, is right now the additional square footage of proposed commercial space in the big house condos at 7,500 square feet. Again, 2 or 3 of the first floors of 2 or 3 big house condos, first floors, if that can't be leased for commercial within 1 year of C of O, that would revert to residential use. Is the council comfortable with that? Again, this discussion is really about land use and sales tax revenue. And I can answer any questions, and certainly Todd and McKay are here to answer any questions as well.
So I'm trying to get it so it shows, and I messed up. I apologize for jumping in around here, folks.
Oh, you're good.
Hey, Thomas, thank you for pointing these things out. I would say that we do. I mean, one of the reasons we're even entertaining this development is because of the potential for us to get, that transit room tax and some, sales tax revenue, and possibly a little bit of, with this commercial space. But I think one of the worst things that could happen for us is if, we built all of our assumptions on a hotel being there and then there was no hotel there. And what does that mean? What have we committed to if we don't get a hotel by a certain period of time? That model, the financial model that has been built that we haven't seen yet, that analysis, what does it do to that? What does the model look like if we don't get a hotel within 5 years? What does it look like if we never get one? One of the reasons I think so far what I've heard from the community is that, we've got so much dense development already. We need to make sure we're getting enough value out of, giving away so much of this density for a development that is really got its anchor amenity, which is this hotel. So I think we need to have, strict measurable, performance items in here. A hotel by a certain date, otherwise, I can say from the people I've spoken to and from my own perspective, we have plenty of, condos going on here. Do we need more of that? The answer is, well, people need a place to live, right? But is that what we want to be as a town? And I think we've got some very specific things in our in our plans that, where we're looking for some things that we don't have right now. And, that includes some usable open space, parks that are dedicated to the town. We have, areas to recreate. We've got, we have to deal with other issues as well. But the town hall we've talked about, we need a town center. I don't see any of that in here. And then when it comes down to the MDA reading that the applicants can't get a hotel on the site, the land's going to remain vacant. It's like, why are we doing this? So what is the right timeline? I don't know what other, cities who are, we'll say, more mature than us have done. What does Park City do? Did they say, if you don't get a hotel there in 3 or 5 years, then, you're going to have to give the land to us? What exactly, give us some guidance if you would. And then I also
Sure.
agree that we've got to, what kind of property is up there? That's going to set the tone for what the town is, as far as our, what our identity is. And I know that we're trying to, develop an identity that's different from our current identity. So how do we get there?
Nope, those are good questions. Yeah, just to kind of take it up to about 35,000 feet, I would say that you're right. With regard to any rezoning in the community, the 2019 general plan does say that commercial is a primary driver of any potential zoning changes. And so I think that is one of the reasons that you all have really started looking at this kind of density on the hillside. And so I do think that commercial is an important component to it. You asked about what would other communities do, maybe Park City, Summit County. Typically in an MDA, this is the opportunity where, you really have to collaborate, work with, partner, agree to disagree with the developer with regard to what you want. And so I would say that based on MDAs that I've worked with in the past, they're very, very specific in terms of timing and what you get. And so it's very, very detailed. So it's a certain quality of hotel. It's a certain quality of commercial. It is a specific timeline. And so that's challenging. It's challenging for the applicant because the market can get a little bit sideways. It can get a little bit wonky, right? It doesn't mean that they can't come back and renegotiate with you, but typically in the MDA, it's pretty specific and pretty spelled out. And your general plan does note that any rezoning really should come with a pretty hefty commercial component. That was what you all heard in 2019 when you did the general plan. And so I would say specificity is important. So hammering that out up front is to everybody's benefit, understanding exactly what that expectation is.
Hey, hey, Thomas, I'd like to add a comment to Chris's. And if you look at the financial analysis, it pretty much collapses without the hotel. So, most of the transient room tax comes from that. Really that's 90% of it. So Chris, I'm in a line with you. We have to have some control over what comes in at what time, with some, some stipulations that if it doesn't, then why are we going ahead? Or it reverts into something else. Whereas if we just built a bunch of homes up there and then waited for the hotel, we're not really benefiting financially the town. Just from a financial standpoint, we won't see, there'd just be no value there. So we need some kind of timeline. I think that's what you were alluding to, and I'm in the same boat, some type
I
of
would
semi-guaranteed
piggyback on that.
timeline. Sorry?
Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done, Ralph. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the phases, I think in one of the elements of the sheets in the inclusion here is some phasing. So, I mean, we need to, we need to put some teeth into that in some format. Otherwise, I think we're if we're depending all on the hotel and, the central commercial to provide the additional 660,000 of revenue, which is a big reason why we'd be doing this, to replace the developer fees, which we've been no longer getting over time, and to, keep taxes at relatively stable rate, then we're gonna have to put some teeth around this too.
No, again, Ralph, we're not replacing developer fees. Sorry, we're not. Okay. We're doing is generating additional revenue from this because the cost of maintaining this town as it grows out gets higher. So we do need additional revenues to maintain the town, but it's not because of developer fees.
Well,
don't
it's a
make money on
dollar,
development.
it's a dollar spent one way or the other. So if we're collecting, if
Okay,
our
but
budget
we
is
don't-
1.6.
Again, for the record, we
Yeah,
do
for
not
the
make
record.
money
Okay,
on
got it.
developer fees.
Yeah, and just to
Sorry.
reiterate that's a really important topic because that we cannot use building development fees as they are specific to address the costs and aren't meant to, we're not supposed to be making money off of it. So the mayor is correct there.
Hey, Ralph, just
So
a
I
real
was going
quick
to piggyback
question.
on what you said, Ralph. Sorry, I got off track there, but so I mean, the whole thing has got to come into a phasing plan, which Thomas is going to get to in the next section. But if there is no, as we've said multiple times, if there is no revenue component from the commercial portion of the project, then there's no justification for the town to let the residential portion of the project build out, which I'm sure is not exciting to hear from the developer standpoint, but it's all tied to the revenue package that you were going through. So we'll need to talk about the Thomas's number 3 here a bit.
Sure, I can jump into this. Hey, Ralph, just out of curiosity, in the fiscal analysis, was there a percent occupancy anticipated? Because that may help us get an understanding.
Yeah,
of
he was basing it on about 50%, which
Okay.
he said was the rough average.
that's about right. Okay.
That's probably reasonable, given that it's going to be a condo/hotel. So some people may not put them on the market as hotel rooms.
That's right. Do you want me to move on to number 3, Mayor?
Sure, thanks.
Okay. And so this one deals with the timing component. It's hard, it's hard for anybody to anticipate exactly what the market will do, but typically in MDAs, there is kind of a start time and there is an end time. And we would make the recommendation that the MDA does include a phasing plan so that there is an understanding by council when the hotel would be built, when a certain number of residential units would be built, et cetera. So maybe if based on the fiscal analysis, year 6 is complete, if the first 5 years could note approximately so many ERUs or so many doors, equivalent residential units or doors are built in a particular year, we would recommend that be included. Right now, it's not. And we also believe that a completion date should be noted so that there's an understanding when full fiscal revenue is anticipated. And I don't know if council wants to walk through some of the details of this, but right now we don't have a phasing plan. That can be really hard for an applicant, keep that in mind. But I think that in an MDA is an opportunity to get at least a pretty rough phasing plan.
I want to comment on that, Thomas. I think we've asked for phasing plans and when we've entered into other MDAs and yes, we've had to go back and work with the developer to make revisions. That's happened. And, we know market conditions change and such, but we would definitely want to have something to start with where, it's part of the agreement. And if the town and the developer wants to go back and, modify the agreement, so be it. But we need something upfront that gives us a little bit of certainty of what to expect.
Okay, so we can certainly work with Todd and McKay to incorporate that into an MDA. Are people generally comfortable with, say, maybe 5 or so years for completion? Because that's kind of what the fiscal analysis disclosed.
Well,
and
Thomas, if you do that, then you got to modify the model, because if it doesn't get built till year 5, then the ownership and the occupancy has to move out 6 years as well. So the revenue generation moves out from 6 years to 10 before we
Well,
start. to see those
that's the other opportunity, Mayor. We could kind of do the fiscal analysis rather than on an expedited 6-year schedule, look at it on a 10 and then do phasing on the 10 as well. I mean, that is another opportunity.
and that makes it pretty far away.
Thomas, is it worthwhile going through that phasing? I mean, it was just kind of a broad brush in that one page that you had. Certainly at some point in the conversation here, I think we need to go through that.
Yeah.
At what point do you guys want us to jump in and give our input on this? Do you want us to just wait till you're done and then
I think we should do them in the sections as we're talking about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would actually like to hear what the developers have to say because a big part of their sales pitch on this project was the hotel and the commercial. And there just seems to be a big out in the MDA that they might not have to do any of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
jump in when we're talking about each of these sections that are displayed, guys.
Okay, I'd like to address the phasing plan on page 32 of what was given to us last night. It showed 9 phases and all phasing of all units was listed as 3 to 4, which all the units were listed under, it was very nebulous that they were all going to be phased out at the same time. And I think that we need to say that right at the beginning, we need to have the hotel as an early phase.
Can we talk about what that
Okay.
means when you
Yeah,
say
okay.
have that as an early phase? We just need some detail. Like, what is it you envision?
well, Todd,
you say have it-
even before that, I'm trying to be patient through this because I understand what you guys are getting to, but I'm just going to ask the question. How do you propose? I mean, what you're talking about is basically a moratorium. At a minimum, it's a moratorium. It's, in my experience, I've done a few master plan communities much larger than this. This is a program to bankrupt a project. In fact, it's a program to kill a project before it ever starts. And maybe let me explain why. If this project, acquisition of land, acquisition of water, infrastructure improvements, amenities, just those things, cost us $100 million. How do I pay that back? How? Now let's say that the hotel is a $80 million hotel, which has to be I don't know, whatever on top of that has to be whatever standard of hotel that you say it is. I now have $180 million in debt. How do you propose that I pay that off? Especially if the market says that I can't build an $80 million hotel immediately. Like, I want to know if we go acquire the land, pay for all of the water, and then put in our infrastructure to develop the property, and I have no mechanism to pay off our debt and or equity until I build a hotel that is an $80 million, another $80 million cost that I may not be able to do. Tell me who's going to put up $100 million for this project? Who's going to do that? If someone's developed a project like that and has a solution, please, because I don't know anybody in my experience who has ever done and or would lend, invest, and or develop that under those circumstances. So someone's going to have to tell me how that works.
McKay, I just have a clarifying question for you. This is Chris. So when you build the hotel, it's a condo hotel, right? Isn't that what we just covered earlier? You're going to end up selling it off piece by piece to owners.
No, Chris. In part, yes. But if it's going to operate as a hotel as you want it to operate as a hotel, it has to actually be rented as a hotel, which means when we go out and we try to bring a flag in, call it a Marriott, call it a Hideout, whatever it is, we go out and do an exhaustive market analysis. That market analysis is going to take in everything that's being built in Deer Valley, the Canyons, and Mayflower. And they're going to say, where do you stand against Mayflower? How are you going to absorb? Does the market have enough room? Today, whatever your time frame is, call it 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, I don't know what it is. Is the market capable of absorbing it today? And if it's not today, who's going to go spend $80 million to go do it? It's not a function of just selling the units, which, by the way, we have to justify and make sure that there's a demand for selling $80 million worth of real estate in one building, structured parking, everything, grading. But then we've got to be able to say, for all of those people who buy those units, are they going to actually get a return on their investment because there's a demand for people to come stay in that hotel? That's what a condo hotel is. It operates like a hotel, even though it's broken up, it's condominiumized. And so if that can't work, if I can't get a flag, if we can't get somebody to do it, it's not going. And I'm not saying that to say that it can't go. It's like placing price controls on food. You have to be able to go when the market goes. And there's nobody in this life who is going to go say, oh, well, McKay, you guys have an obligation to go build an $80 million hotel, so you better go do it right now. Like, regardless of what the market says.
McKay,
Hey, Matt, I don't
you're
think
not going to have the money to pay off the balance of the debt that you have on the property or anything.
McKay, I understand what you're saying. It's just when you came to us to sell us this project, this was a huge part of it. And then now all of a sudden it's going to be.
Sherry, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. What I am saying is that it is going to happen in the time frame that the market says it's going to happen. And in order for me to be able to go to our investors and our banks and everybody else and be able to say that yes, on the front end, just on the front end, forget about phase 2 of building an $80 million hotel. Forget about that. We actually have the wherewithal in place to pay back the roughly $100 million that we're investing just in the infrastructure. And what you're saying is, I can't sell another piece of dirt until the hotel comes in, or half of the dirt, or a quarter of the dirt, or something like that. Like, that's a great way to bankrupt a property. That's all I'm saying. Like, I get where it is where you're going. I totally understand what it is that you want. I'm not saying that the hotel can't go in, but placing a moratorium on the project until it does is a mistake. And
I
it's going
don't-
to
I don't think we're saying that. I think we just want to have some timeline for the hotel and not the fact that you have an out not to do it at all.
we didn't say that. What we've said,
It does say
what we have-
that.
no, what we have said is there's a hotel pad that, again, using these same numbers, if we were to go, we got $100 million into this, we cannot pay, we are dedicating this piece of dirt towards this use, and it cannot be used for anything else. Meaning we've got to shift all of our debt, all of our equity, everything else over to everything else in order to recoup that until that does happen. We are in effect saying we can't touch this piece of dirt unless it becomes a hotel, which means every other piece of property carries the weight of that obligation until it goes in. And so we're trying to meet what it is that you guys are asking. We're trying to say, look, we're not going to touch this thing over here. We're going to save it for a hotel. We're just saying we're going to let it go when the market says that it can, and we're going to push every day to get it done. We have no interest in letting that piece of dirt just sit there. Why would we?
That makes sense, what you're arguing. How much acreage is that piece of dirt you're talking about?
Right now, that pad's, without calculating any open space and stuff like that around it, it's a little over 4 acres. It's like 4.5 acres.
McKay, I have
So-
a real quick question. I mean, when you did the fiscal analysis, at what year did you anticipate it built out?
Well, to be honest, we haven't even seen Rob's. What you guys have not reviewed, Todd and I have not reviewed. We haven't seen it. We
No, but
just
when
sent over.
you did your own analysis, what was your basis?
I can't remember what year we went out. It may have been year 5 or year 6 or something like that. I don't know.
That's right. It was. We showed it in year 5, starting in year 5 and completing in year 6, occupying in year 7.
So that's
again-
consistent with Rob's analysis. But what I haven't heard, Mac, is give us your best estimates. Is it 4 to 8? Is it 3 to 7? Give us your view of how you would take this project. And I get all your points. I think you're just like Chris was saying, and Sherry, all valid points. But give us a little bit more substance as to what your phasing might be, based upon various factors that you're subject to, or what you think those factors and assumptions might be. Because I haven't really heard that. I've seen your analysis, which was 5 years, didn't build in a lot of assumptions. We know we're going through an economic scenario that might last a year and a half or so before we come out of it. So give us a better view of things.
So right now,
hey, McKay, before you jump in there, can I just add one comment? Ralph and Sherry, I think you brought it up, or maybe it was Carol, asked about what was sent to you last night. So just to be really clear before McKay gets into what he's going to get into, that phasing plan that was sent was specific to the PID infrastructure. So there's a little bit of discrepancy between when the infrastructure goes in and when the homes complete and begin to produce revenue and property tax revenue to the town. And so I just want to make sure, and the reason we put in there those phases that we did was because that's when that infrastructure will go in, and that's the timing of how we see that going forward. So I just want to make sure that it was a clear delineation between timing of the infrastructure and timing of the residential construction, as well as the hotel construction, as well as the amenity construction.
Can I ask for clarification for that? Because the LOI mentions a phasing plan that is in the MDA, and the only phasing plan that I found in the MDA had to do with 4 phases related to amenities, but there were no, other than that, I didn't see any kind of phasing plan. So maybe you can speak to that as well.
Yeah, so the phasing plan attached to the LOI had the phasing for everything, all the amenities, all the residential, all the commercial, but that is specific to the infrastructure. So there's, like I said, there's 2 separate phasing plans. There's one for the infrastructure, how that's going in, and then there's one for the construction. Now, I think to the point, what McKay's saying is we have no control over how quickly the market absorbs the townhomes or the estate lots or the commercial or this. We don't have control over that, but we do have an idea and an estimate of what the timing of the infrastructure is just based on logistics. So I think there's 2 different things. There's a market condition and there's a logistics, and logistics dictate a lot of the infrastructure in terms of what needs to go in first. There's certain things that can't come before others. And that's what that phasing plan attached to the LOI that I assume you're referring to.
I can jump
Well,
back
I'm
over
referring
to
to what the LOI says, so I wasn't sure what you meant by that. So I was looking for a clearer, it talked about the MDA phasing plan. And I think what council has been asking for a long time is an understanding of your phasing for the actual project. And when it's, so what I'm hearing you say is that you aren't willing, because you're not, that the hotel, there's no timeline for when the hotel will happen. That's just 100% going to be based on market conditions. What's
Can
your
I
phase
answer that,
for the rest of
Polly?
the?
Oh, phasing for the rest of the project?
Yeah, what's your phasing for the rest of the project? Are you going to put in the
I thi-
condos first? You putting in the single families first? You putting in the townhomes first? When are you going to develop the bed and breakfast? I mean, that's
And Polly,
what we've been asking for a while, so
and
be helpful.
Polly, this is Tim and council and mayor. So we did get an updated plan set that did show and talk about phasing, but it doesn't show, it only shows the roads being phased. It doesn't show, and that's what Polly's asking for, is what is going in this phase one? Is it all those homes along the phase one shaded boundary that you're showing, or what? And I think that's McKay, that's what she's trying to, we're trying to get at.
And we and that's a fair question, and we can get into we can create an exhibit that will show what we anticipate we could develop first based off of that. Like what Todd's pointing out is that there's a certain amount of infrastructure that we have to put in first in order for utility lines to loop, traffic to work, things like that. And then based off when that infrastructure goes in, it will allow us to develop certain pods immediately. And that is also market driven. We've talked about having strategic partnerships with builders that we know and have experience with, where we'll say, we want you guys to either come on in and partner with us and or build this product on this pod. And we've tried to separate, 6 different product types in order to develop those. I don't think what I'm getting from the town is you guys, while you would like us to show that, you're probably less concerned with when we sell the casitas versus the villas as you are with when we develop the hotel and the boutique hotel and the restaurants and that sort of thing. So if you want, I can jump over to that, to, going back to Ralph's question on the hotel and then maybe to Polly's question on the boutique hotel. Do you want me to address those two?
Okay. Why not?
So on the hotel, Ralph, to like and everybody, when we talk about developing the hotel, this is where we're at right now. Okay. As soon as we are done and we have the entitlements in place, and we've already started working, as best we can, given, this is a lot of work. Like, we have quite a bit of bandwidth, but we are focusing all of our attention on obviously getting through the entitlement phase before we're able to do a whole lot else after that. We've spent a lot of time with the owners and developers of Hotel Park City. We mentioned that at the town hall and meeting and to the public. We have a verbal commitment from them to partner with us on that. This is the challenge. The challenge there is that it is an $80 million hotel, requires $20 million in cash and $60 million in guaranteed debt. So in order for us to get over the hurdle to do that, Todd right now, Todd and I, we will take that piece of property, contribute it, and partner and with them in order to do that. They are a great operator, but the market is going to determine when everybody, including them, feels comfortable to put up that amount of cash with us and guarantee that amount of debt. Meaning they're interested, they want to come in and do it. We don't have a written agreement with them yet. And what they are looking at is the same things that we are looking at, which is how is what's happening over at Mayflower in particular, but in other locations going to impact us. And, the Mayflower development, how long has that taken just to get to their infrastructure? 5 years just to get where they're at right now. They don't have a Four Seasons right now, but I know that they have a lot of pretty fantastic things in the works. And to be honest, the big kahuna is going to go there first, I think, because it's going to have ski and ski out capability. Whatever flag it is that we're able to get, Todd and I, this is our personal belief. We're going to have to put in the infrastructure. We're going to have to put in some amenities. We're going to have to put in our entry monuments and our arrival experience. And we are going to have to show that this is a special place. And we plan on doing that. That's why we've tried to demonstrate that through our amenities phasing plan and all the other things. So as far as the hotel goes, Ralph, that's where we're at right now. I feel like given where we're at in this process, where we're just working through the entitlements and the limited amount of time that we have to focus on this, before we've closed and got all of this done is great. It's good. But I can't force, I don't want to and can't force any one of our investors into saying it's got to come by such and such date. I can say this, Ralph, and council members, I'll use a Traverse Mountain analogy. We had IKEA come to us years and years ago before they went into the Draper location, and they wanted to go on the 20 acres right where the Adobe campus is. That's where they wanted to go. They were working with the state and with the cities to try to get incentives to come, and with us. And at the end of the day, we didn't feel like it was the right image, and not image, that's not the right way of putting it. It wasn't the right, it was right at the gateway to our project. We turned them down. It would have been an insane anchor. It's a great anchor, but we turned them down. And later, because we didn't feel like it was the right fit, and we got Adobe. And Adobe built one of the most beautiful campuses in probably all of Salt Lake, and has been a great anchor to the development. All of those employees contribute to the money that's spent everywhere else in the community. Meaning, we were patient and we waited for the right fit, and it benefited the town and everybody else that we waited. Had we had a gun to our head, we would have gone with IKEA, or somebody else. We had other options that were even less than that. So we want to do it right. We just can't. It can't have contingencies built into it that don't allow Todd and I to pay our debt and to have massive amounts of that hanging out there. So
Mac, can I just, by the way, I agree on, I think Adobe, being in that business was a great addition to Utah, and brought it, was much better trade-off in that sense. What I'd like to hear though, so far you're bringing back all the great reasons why this is a great project. So I think we just need to know a little bit more about how you feel this the next 5 to 7 years might develop for you. So as if you were talking to an investor as opposed to a government body, how would you present it to them? And how would you show them how you're going to develop your cash flow, so to speak, with the entities with good and bad assumptions, So I'd love to hear that. I don't think I'm as comfortable with that, but I think you guys know that in the back of your heads.
Oh, I'll tell you what my pitch to our investors would be and is pay off the debt, own that property free and clear, so we can make sure that we bring the right person in. That's what I would say.
Well, and McKay, let me add to that, and Ralph, let me add a little detail to that. I think the biggest thing that I think is understood, but maybe it warrants just walking through it. Success begets success. The amenities are going to be driven by the residential sales, right? The amenities and the residential sales and the sense of place that's created, right? That's our core. Someone mentioned that the hotel was our anchor amenity. The amenities are our anchor amenity. The amenities are are going to be as good or better than anything else that's up there. And that is going to be our anchor. That is what people are going to come for. And when the residential sales, right, homes drive the ability to develop additional amenities and maintain those amenities, obviously, then that creates that sense of place that then funnels through to our hotel flag, right? It's us and our developer partner, which is Hotel Park City. And then the last component of that is the flag. So whether that's a Marriott Autograph or an AC or whatever it is, that is the last piece of it. And that flag is looking for one demographic, which we've talked about a lot, right? Market study, specific demographics that are going to support the financial feasibility of that flag, but then also the sense of place. You've got to create something. So if we went in there today and cut a road in and said, hey guys, just go up there in the corner and build a hotel that's 80 million bucks and trust us, it'll work, we're kind of going to get laughed at. So hopefully, and maybe it's our fault, we haven't done a very good job of articulating how the phasing looks, because I guess maybe we're approaching it a little more systematic from an infrastructure standpoint. But really, we've got to understand that you've got to build some residential units to generate the demand for the commercial. And the demand for the commercial is also going to help support the amenities. The support of the amenities is going to create this sense of place, which is going to entice that flag to come. And I think what McKay's trying to explain is that 1 year, hopefully, we've got a lot of money riding on the fact that, it's going to happen soon. But if it doesn't happen right away, we have to be patient. No one's goal is to get a Motel 6 in there, and no one's going to, to go down that road. But we've got to have some flexibility to be patient and get the right person there, which is what McKay's story was about. Like, that's reality. That's how it works. And so we're just asking for a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of understanding that there are some market conditions right now with interest rates going crazy, bond rates going crazy. There's all kinds of things. We need to let that settle down a little bit. And those things fluctuate from time to time, but we're going to plow forward. We're going to get infrastructure in. We're going to get houses going, which is going to create all that demand and create that sense of place, which is what is going to drive that flag to say, okay, we're ready to go. Let's do it. Does that help, Ralph?
Yeah, I think, I've certainly heard a lot of this, before. And I think, it's, I think you're trying to address the approaches. And by the way, I get the fact that you just can't, you have to start paying off your debt. You have to get investors at a certain phase. I think what we're looking for, though, is, give us some feel for, all our spreadsheets are predicated on that 5 years, including yours. So give us a feel for, if you were looking out from, as a hotel operator or whatever, is that 3 or 4? Is that 7? Do you have any feel for what that might be in today's environment, so to speak?
So Ralph, I think to be fair, I mean, these guys have made a fairly good effort to try and help us understand what's going through their heads and how they have to think about this. So I don't know that asking them again tonight is going to change their answer. I think what we have to say is, okay, particularly based on what Todd just said, is let's think about this and how does this all work? Because if you're selling homes to people in a community and you're selling those homes based on having certain things available to them at some point, right? Because they're moving there not just because of the house or the view, they're moving there because of the house, the view, and it's going to be next to a health club, it's going to be near this, it's going to have this, those kinds of things. Then you start to say at some point they're going to have to deliver on that, or they're not going to sell any more properties because people are going to be looking for the promise. So let's give them a chance to think that through a little bit more and come back and see if they're willing to be a little bit more concrete around the time windows that you're looking for.
That makes sense. Yeah, just I think we're all looking for more details. And by the way, nobody's here. I mean, nobody's here knowing what next year will bring in terms of the economy, the world markets, and even locally. So, just good analysis on your part, I'd say, would be beneficial to my way of thinking. How did you come to your conclusions, and what are your assumptions, and those kinds of things? So Yeah, that's it.
Ralph, why don't, man, Mr. Mayor, maybe, and I really appreciate that because I think that would help Todd. And I think maybe Todd, you and I can go sit down with Ryan and talk about what we feel like is a realistic timeline. And we just are not wanting contingent. We don't want an additional contingent liability on top of the ones we're already assuming and acquiring the property. Meaning, we can't afford to have like if you don't have the hotel, then X, Y, or Z happens. But we are more than happy to say, look, let's sit down with the guys at Hotel Park City. That's Ryan, and figure out what we think a realistic timeline is on that hotel, and we can at least say, based on our experience, this is where we anticipate or hope it will be. And then to Todd's point, I would feel more comfortable because I do think a component of selling this hotel is going to be the nature of the community itself. Meaning, is a hotel going to say, yeah, I'd like to be inside a community like a Tuhei versus I'd like to be inside, something that is not like that, doesn't have the amenities, doesn't have the arrival experience, doesn't have the panache and the drama. And it doesn't, they're going to want to know it feels like a resort. I would feel more comfortable talking about how we can work with you guys on the amenity package, meaning how we accelerate those timelines that would help bring the hotel in rather than putting these drop dead timelines on the hotel that if you don't do this, the rest of the development stops,
So again, I think, we spent a good bit of time. We're, over an hour into the meeting now, and we're still here. So we have more to talk about. I think we've had a great discussion. I think there's still, you've got some input, we've got some feedback from you. I do some thinking. That's fine. We understand your concerns. At least I do. And then, the council needs some time to cogitate, to decide if they're willing to, accept a more flexible phasing plan than some of the other ones we've seen. So, okay, so we know we're working on that. Let's keep going through the list so that we're getting everything on the table tonight that we can. And then with that, it gives folks time to do some thinking.
Okay, Mayor.
Thomas?
Sure. I think we're up to number 4. So this is amenities and timing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that there has to be water, obviously. That's another risk for these guys. They have to go invest in water, which they, as part of their $100 million or so for infrastructure. That's a chunk of it right there as well. So.
Yeah, good point, Mayor. We can work with them with regard to phasing, tying it to the fiscal analysis. If that was a little bit expedited and the needed phasing is a little bit longer, we can start to look at tying those two together.
Well, and I was just wondering, just because water is so key, legally they can't build or do anything without water, how that ties into their phasing plan. I think in their MDA, they suggest that the water is tied into each of the final subdivision plats. And so I didn't know, again, it just goes back to that phasing. If they don't have water for a hotel, they're not going to be able to build a hotel. So I'm not sure how that works.
Thanks, Polly. Good point. Yeah, I mean, it'd be helpful if we understood your approach to the purchase at some point. Are you going to buy it in tranches and that kind of stuff? So
are you talking about the? Sure, we can go through that too, Mr. Mayor.
I think, Thomas, this is a bit more of the same stuff, but go ahead and.
Yep, this is somewhat connected. This is just to ensure that amenities are tied to phases. And the way it's worded right now in the MDA is that when X number of units are CO'd, certain amenities will be implemented. And I think that makes some sense. I think that the connection here is that there should be an overall phasing plan so that we understand what the phasing of the development is, because then this part, number 4, becomes connected to number 3, the phasing plan. And because right now there's no timeline for the development of, say, 200 units, at which point a pond goes in. And so I don't think this needs a lot of discussion other than to say that we'll work with Todd and McKay to make sure that there's a phasing plan. And as part of that phasing plan, it'll be connected to points by which amenities would be built: trails, pond, pavilion, etc. The other thing that was noteworthy is, I don't know if it's worth going back up to the map at the beginning of the document, but we do have with this proposal, I don't think it's a problem, but it is worth noting that we will have 3 amphitheaters in the community. There will be one up at Deer Springs at the top of the map, Mayor. There will be one down in Shoreline. If you stay on the map, I think so. Deer Springs at the top of that map has an amphitheater proposed, and a little park and some pickleball courts. And then we've got an amphitheater proposed for a subsequent phase in Shoreline. That comes with a clubhouse, sports court, splash pad, pool, and other things. And I just want to make sure that we might give ourselves some flexibility to make sure that we're getting a variety of recreational components, because we're also getting additional pickleball space at Deer Waters this summer. So we'll just want to make
We've
sure.
talked about that, Thomas, in the past. And so
Okay.
the goal is to, recognizing what different guys have promised, we need to start having conversations. Staff needs to start having conversations with these guys saying, look, don't go building an amphitheater just because it says so. We need to talk about that. Because we may or may not want an amphitheater. We may just want that space to be green. We may want the funds set aside to do something else. You know, we need to start teeing up with the various folks that, you know, the goal is not, I don't believe it's appropriate to have 3 amphitheaters in a town the size of Hideout.
Right. Agreed.
So I'm looking for, you know, planning to do some work and come back with a proposal on who we want to ask to do what.
Okay. So
Well,
that
just-
go ahead.
Sorry to jump in, but you know, we already have established MDAs with those other developers. So I think, you know, here is a good place to evaluate the amenities that are being proposed and see if there's something that else that we want, so we can put it in this MDA. But right now it says they're promising us an amphitheater. So that's what this is.
Polly and Mr. Mayor, if you guys would like to see something other than an amphitheater, I think we're more than happy to just go back and brainstorm and see if we can come up with something that is different.
Well, it may be, okay, that this is based on your proposed development, that this may be ideal for up there and the other one's less ideal. So that's what I need from my staff, is to think it through and say, okay, if this goes, we really want that there because we think this is a draw and it'll work better up there than it will down at the bottom of Shoreline.
And Mayor, I am more than happy to work with Todd and McKay on this. I just wanted to point out that right now we have preliminary plans and MDAs that do note an amphitheater up in Deer Springs and an amphitheater in Shoreline. I don't disagree with you.
I recognize that, Thomas,
work
and
with
I'm
them.
asking you
I will
I'm
do that.
challenging you in your role as the planner to help me think through what really makes sense. Not just
can do
here,
that.
but everywhere.
I can do that. Okay, I just wanted to point it out to make sure that everybody knew what was going in specific locations.
I would like to
The
make
other thing-
a comment if I could. We have had many meetings where we've talked about things that we would like. I'm referring back to the general plan. And one of the number one things that was requested by the town was a community center and a town hall. And I have a question as to how many more meetings are we going to continue to have always on Zoom when we don't have an adequate town hall to hold meetings and to get our community together. I know Todd and McKay, we've talked to you before about the need for a community center town hall and not an open air pavilion or another amphitheater. So I hope that you would consider that.
And Carol,
I think that also goes to Thomas as well.
And Thomas as well. Thank you.
Well, and Carol, I appreciate that. And we probably haven't, we call it a pavilion. Maybe that's not a great word for it. On that 3D model, you can see one of the images that we have used for it. When we envision that, we envision it as a place. I don't know if we necessarily envisioned it as a town hall, primarily because we thought that there was a town hall that was proposed in another part of town. I thought Nate had one somewhere, but having said that, we mentioned this, I think, when we were talking to
you.
I mean,
I had a vision for one somewhere else if that particular project goes forward as well. So I mean, again, we have to, it's moving all the time because things are moving all the time. But yeah, that is another need that Carol points out. But we talked, you talked about using that space up there as a flexible meeting room and some other things, and it sounded pretty good to us when we talked about it. So.
Hey, this is Chris. I'm going to pile on with Carol. I mean, I've heard her ask for this half a dozen times already, mention it. There is no attempt in here to take these things into consideration. I haven't seen anything change. So it's the same plan that we've been looking at for months. It feels
Can
like.
you give me an example of that, Chris? What has been asked that we haven't changed?
Okay, so I think we talked to you guys about, when we talk about a meeting space, we're talking about something with walls and heat and a place to be comfortable indoors. It's not, it's not a pavilion. Which
that building has that. That's what I was trying to say. It actually has all that. We call it a pavilion for lack of a better word. But if you look at those images that we have, it's enclosed.
Sure.
And has some outdoor space also, but
right. But it's not dedicated to the town, right? This is going to be your own. You're going to rent it out to people to use, right? It's going to be we're talking about needing specific public amenities here, not private amenities, things that you might be able to, for a membership fee, go lift some weights somewhere or take a class, yoga class. We're talking about having a community center, a place where people in the town can gather. This is not just, something that's going to be your sense of place for a potential hotel anchored area. This is actually defining the heart of what this community is trying to become. And you did mention that Nate had promised a town hall in another property, but this is the annexation area in Richardson Flats, which is, it's still going through the courts. We have no guarantee that we're going to prevail. We don't know what's going to happen there. So, we've got to be looking at this last large property available within our current boundaries where we can try to realize some of the vision in our general plan, which includes these public spaces.
Hey, Chris, if I can just jump in there for a minute. We've offered and have had extensive conversations about the check, the $2.5 million going to the town. There's nothing that says that a town hall can't be built with that money. I mean, if that's what's so important, then why don't we have that discussion in terms of that? I mean, that's real dollars going directly to the town that can be used. If you don't want to do the underpass, if the town hall is that much more important, let's focus on that. I mean, we tried to come up with a solution from what we call a pavilion. It's a building. Granted, we can't dedicate it to the town. It's not going to be the town's building, but it's obviously, we've talked about having it available for use by the town and all those things. But if that's important, then let's talk about that. Let's figure out how we use those funds to go build a town hall somewhere. And I mean, again, we're open to those things, but I just don't think it's fair to say that nothing's changed and that we haven't tried to address every single issue that has ever been brought up, because we have. And I just don't think that's fair to say that.
All right, well, we can agree to disagree with that, Todd, but we're just talking about one thing. If you look at our general plan, we're trying to make community connections. We're trying to get safely across 248, which is one of the reasons why we're looking for potential tunnel. I mean, when UDOT built that road, they did not contemplate moving people or wildlife across a busy highway. That's a problem for us in Hideout. We live here. People travel through here. They hit deer, they wreck their cars. We have traffic accidents. We have a lot of things that we need to address. And, we haven't even begun to talk about a wildlife corridor, for example, that would go through this property that you have drawn out here, which is now, very dense. And where's
there's an exhibit for that, Chris, that we've attached and sent over to you. And it shows the wildlife corridors that go through there.
Oh, okay. Well, I haven't seen that yet. Let's walk through that. But it's not, give us this public meeting area and we'll be satisfied. And here you go, you can have your, high density development. That's not how it's going to work for us. We're looking to solve not a single problem, but the various, the hand we've been dealt here, living, here in Hideout. We are locked in with Summit County all around us and a lake. So we've got to, use what we have available to try to make this community into that sense of place that may or may not fit in with your vision of what your sense of place is for these 112 acres.
I mean, that's okay. We that pavilion, again, misnomer, is probably a $3 or $4 million building. And so, I mean, I think it's going to end up spectacular. You may look at it when it's built and be like, maybe we ought to use that. I don't know. But I think Todd's comment is right on. I mean, we love the idea of an underpass, but if the town hall is more important, we can use it for that also. I guess, I don't know.
Well, and I think just one more point on that really quick, if I may. Chris, we completely understand and appreciate what you're saying. But we've had this conversation before, and I hope it's not the expectation of the council that we solve every single issue on this one property that the town currently has or may have in the future. I hope that there is, some measure of reason associated with that, because at the end of the day, we, Todd and McKay, are footing the bill and guaranteeing all of these things behind us. We're putting our personal stakes on this to make sure this happens. And so it's not just an open piggy bank to say, hey, we're just going to solve every single problem, no matter what the cost is. There has to be some sort of measure of reasonableness. And that's all we're asking. We're just asking for everyone to look at it and say, we've worked really, really hard, and we've pulled forward a ton of work and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of man hours to try and get all this stuff put together to hopefully address the concerns that the town has. And again, we feel like we've done a great job. We feel like we've really presented a plan that addresses the major concerns and solves a lot of issues. Does it solve every issue for everybody? Of course not. Will it ever? No, no single project ever will. But I hope that we can get a little more credit than just saying nothing has changed and you're not solving all of our issues. And maybe I heard that wrong, but it feels like that. And we're just asking for a little bit of credit for how far this has come and what a great project it is. I mean, it really is. And I think we can all cut across the merits and, find fault, but it's a really great project and it brings a ton of benefits to the town, and it's going to be spectacular. And if there's some tweaks, let's talk about it. If there's some things that we can do differently, let's talk about it. That's why we're here. But I just don't think it's fair to say that we have done nothing and nothing has changed.
So
I
again,
actually-
sorry, I think, one of the things that's being pointed out here is that we as a town have some work to do as well, because we've got, as Thomas put at the top of the drawing there, we've got various agreements to do various things that came at various times that made sense at the time, but we've never looked at it holistically.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we've got, a lot more of the build out committed. And so I think that's our next little piece of work we have to do is look at the thing collectively and say, okay, we're getting an under overpass here, we're getting a playing field here, we're getting pickleball courts here, we're getting, this, and this. So with that in mind,
That's fair.
where are the gaps and what else do we need to think about? So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's a great challenge from the council to get for the staff organization to get a little bit more holistic now that we've got various pieces of the puzzle. So we'll take that on as well. Recognize that you guys are going to do a piece of it, and Deer Springs is doing a piece of it, and, Shoreline's doing a piece of it, and so forth. So we'll try and put that together and see if we can't revisit the promises across those and see if we got them at a point where they make sense as an integrated picture.
Okay.
Well, one thing we haven't gotten is we haven't put out the survey, so we have an opportunity to perhaps include a question like that. Would you rather have, if we had a choice, we always have choices and there are trade-offs in life. So would we rather have a greater degree of connectivity, or would we put that money into a town hall or something? Or something where the town has semi-ownership or control over the pavilion. That would be a good thing to get some input on, because I think I agree with Carol. Those are some of the same things we've been vying for a number of years now since we put the general plan, but we don't always get all the input we want. I mean, it's our input here so far, not a lot of other town input, and this town has changed. There are more doors opening up every day. So maybe we can include that in the survey question as well.
Could I ask a question? Do you have any kind of conceptual drawing or plan of what the pavilion would look like? Because I was under the impression that it was going to be more an outdoor building with a roof and maybe a side or two, because you had talked about outdoor weddings and things like that.
Yeah, sorry, Carol. That's like, we haven't done a good job probably of illustrating what that looks like. We've got that 3D model, and it does have two images that pull up in that 3D model, but we'll pull those out. We'll pull the image out and shoot them over to you. They're conceptual, but it would give you an idea of the direction architecturally that we're thinking that we're going to go. And maybe that's the start of a conversation. But we, just so you're aware, Carol, we did hear you loud and clear, and it was our effort to, if you remember, we had that big pond, and we're like, okay, we're going to address this issue. Let's shrink the pond up, and let's build this building. We call it a pavilion. I don't know why I use that word, and Todd and I did, but it's probably a bad, for lack of a better term. But if you look at those images, what we were talking about was a really pretty building that faces broadside that pond, with beautiful hardscape on the outside, large doors that would open up, so it acts as like it has indoor outdoor capabilities. So you could have weddings, you could have events, it could operate for town hall meetings, and has a spectacular setting to it. It would also be used for the community, obviously, because in our minds, we had pictured it with big screen TVs and ping pong tables and pool tables and stuff like that could also be used for the community, kids in particular and stuff like that. There's a place to go, a safe place where, it's kind of a big, 3,000 square foot, 4,000 square foot space, but
Can you
we'll
show those images, because I couldn't open what you sent at the last minute.
If Lars is on and he could screen share, and I don't want to take time away from the mayor's agenda and Thomas's, I can read if you.
Yeah, we're getting, I mean, again, we seem to be diving down, even though we're trying to keep it high enough to
Yeah.
review.
We'll
a
send
number of
that. We'll
things
send
with
that.
council.
We'll send it over to
So
you.
I'd
Okay, if you could just
appreciate
send it in another format because I couldn't open that. You sent it.
Thank you, Carol, for the reminder. That's great. And the thought process. I think we again have some work to do as a town as well. Thomas, can you talk briefly about 4A3? About the exemption of public space. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, and this may be something that Todd and McKay can clarify, and it may require a spatial analysis on the proposed site plan. The way the November 2020 code reads is that basically the community, the town of Hideout requires about 3 acres for every 100 units of density. And so this is a request for an upzone from about 100 units-ish of density in the mountain to about 600 units. And so pursuant to the new code, it would require 3 acres per 100 units. And so the requirement would be 18 acres. And so this may kind of connect to number 5, which are zoning requests for zoning waivers, but we might need to map out the amount of public space, public usable space for the community, because the requirement is actually 18 acres. And I'm not sure what is proposed. Todd and McKay, you may have a number on that, or Lars might. We don't have a number on that yet.
Yeah.
And just to tie it to our code, it's section 10.08.34, which is suggested in the MDA as a text amendment to remove that whole section.
Yep, that's right. And now we can talk about some areas where we may be able to do something like that, but the reason why we took that out is we are going way above and beyond what the code requires. And in our amenities, whether it's the trail system, the clubhouse, all of those things. And so that was the reason for taking it out. We have some areas that, we can, I guess I can go back and sit down with Lars and talk to him about, but that was the logic behind why we had done that.
Well, again, I think what Thomas is saying there, McKay, is you are doing other things. So there's this space, there's space around the pond, there's this, and it adds up to something. We just don't know what that all is. So
yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Todd again. We have significantly more. What McKay was trying to say is we have significantly more than 18 acres of open space. And I guess maybe the question from our side is, what is the goal of that code section? Because we're providing significantly more than 18 acres between all the amenities and the open space, trails, etc. But is it that the town wants to own it and maintain it, or maybe we're just missing?
No,
the point
I think Todd, I think this is Thomas. I think I can. The code requires the 18 acres of the public space as a requirement for denser developments, right? And so again, this is at about 600 units. So at 3 per 100, this is 18 acres. Trails are above and beyond this. And so trail connections are an additional requirement. This is for kind of that public space that is usable. So it may be it could be pickleball courts, it could be sports courts, it could be the pond area. But I think that you need to delineate the area of that, because I know you guys have talked about that as an amenity, and absolutely it is. It just needs to be defined in terms of an area, because you may be proposing less at the end of the day. We just need to understand that we don't have an area designated for public space on the plan. Again, you may be more, you may be less, but we just need to see that area dedicated. The town doesn't want to maintain it. The town simply wants to use it.
Well, and we are totally obviously all of it will be open for the town use. We just don't want to dedicate it. We want to be able to keep
No,
it and
the
maintain
town
it.
is fine with public access easements on land that
Okay.
you maintain. There's no worries about that. I think we just need an understanding of that,
Yeah, I think we're just trying to
geography.
get clarity that
No problem.
space is
And-
open
and-
to the public.
To help
No
you
problem.
guys, public space is different than open space.
Mhm.
Right. So when you look at that section, it talks about land shall be reserved and improvements installed for public space. Public space may include parks and playgrounds and other recreation purposes. And again, this is different. We have a different code section for
Sure.
public trail requirements. Such areas shall be shown and marked on the plat as reserved for public space. Installation of recreational areas shall be constructed at the expense of the applicant and built to town standards. And then there's the formula of 3 acres per 100 residential lots or units. And there are other specific requirements. For example, subdivisions with greater than 76 lots shall provide amenities such as a park area with seating, a ball field, soccer base, softball, football, or similar, and parking spaces. Ones that are smaller are required to do a park with the equivalent of 2 tennis courts or gathering areas, that type of thing. So this is in our code 100834. It's required for any development, not one that's being upzoned or anything like that. This is just a standard requirement in our code. So you
So
need to.
it's 10.08.34.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
what-
right. And that's in your text red lines that you
Yeah.
crossed out.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, again, it sounds like it's there. We just need to agree that it's there by
Got it.
saying, okay, it's the pond, it's the area around the amphitheater, it's this pavilion building, it's blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Okay. We'll put together another exhibit for that.
Okay, so this is number 5, and Todd and McKay, you can help walk us through this. I'm going to list these really quickly, or actually, maybe I won't. You all can read them, but there's a request for relief from some of the 2020 revised Hideout Town Code requirements, and some of these deal with rights of way widths, sensitive land restrictions on development. But let me just kind of go through these real quickly. I'm sorry. Rights of way widths pertaining primarily to the 26 feet of right of way with road, curb, and gutter on either side, sensitive lands where new code doesn't allow disturbance or land development on slopes over 30%. Stormwater and basin locations, they have to be on site. They have to be basically green infrastructure. They have to be usable. Retaining wall heights, right now we allow for 6 feet max. There's the applicants are requesting a waiver of that. Visitor parking, we need to understand exactly where that is and where bicycle parking and lockups might be. Setbacks requirements primarily deals with front setbacks from the rights of way, maybe some side and rear setback reliefs are requested, but that needs to be understood. And then the above one was the public space requirements that we just discussed. And there are some of the other requirements again are, we just want to make sure that there's a comfort with the density proposed that is 500-600% of what the density is allowed. I mean, that's kind of been discussed prior, but we just want to make sure that these requests for relief from the code, we want to make sure that council is comfortable with this request. This wasn't fully understood or presented to the planning commission, and so we just want to make sure that it's fully presented to and understood by the town council.
Yeah, I have some questions on that, on 3 of these. One is so what does that mean in terms of road width? Because we do have obviously emergency safety standards, and we've already gone through this, I don't know how many times, in terms of road widths and why, and dealing with emergency vehicles. Number 2 is D, retaining wall heights. I'm not sure, I saw what you were trying to accomplish or get some waiver on, and I don't understand why you can't deal with multiple 6-foot heights versus why we need a wall 10, or why you think you need walls that are 10 feet high, because I think that goes against even the grain of aesthetic value, not only, and many other things. And then change to the setbacks. I'm not big on that because that's where you lose your view shed, and that's been an issue in our town, and that's why we did change the zoning regulations, because so many people came in early, lost their view, and the next person built right next to them because we only had 10-foot side setbacks. So those are 3 things that we worked hard on from the planning board when I was on it, and I think carried that over into the zoning. So explain to me if you can. I don't know if you want to do all those here, but those are my 3. Those are 3 of the, the concerns on this list that I have.
Okay, do you mind if I jump in on those real quick, Ralph?
Sure, however you want to deal with it. Or Mayor,
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to accomplish everything you want, but I'd certainly like to understand that either here or at some point.
This is one of the ones I did want to see us drill down on, so that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start with the road cross sections. So we have 3 different proposed road cross sections. We met with Thomas and we met with Ryan to discuss them. And we can continue to have these discussions, but here's the logic behind it. So the road cross sections that we have, one is your typical neighborhood road cross section. It's just it's the same cross section that you have, not the ones that are existing in your town. These are the new road cross sections, which are much wider. So you have basically 2 10-foot lanes. You have a 3-foot shoulder on either side, and then you have a 2.5-foot drainage like swale. That gets you to roughly 31 feet of road. After that, there's a 10-foot utility easement on either side of the road. Typically, we don't have utility easements that run always on both sides of the road. Our utilities run down one side. That's basically what happens pretty much everywhere where we are, most of our developments. But it's our understanding the utility companies like to run their utilities on both sides of the street. But so in some cases, that is not going to be required because we don't have units on both sides of the street. If that makes sense. And so what we're proposing is that we have the 10-foot PUE. So the road cross section itself, the asphalt, the 3-foot shoulder for bikes, and the drainage well, that does not change. You just have the PUE is on one side of the street, and it's not on the other side. That would be one alternative. Another alternative would be that you maintain the 2 10-foot easements on both sides of the street. However, you can have a greater slope on one side. You can have like a 2-to-1 max slope on the other side of the street, so it doesn't have to be flat. Meaning you may have a one-sided, if you were to look at the concept plan, you may have a one-sided road where you've got units on one side of the road and it's backed up against a hillside on the other side. The utility easement isn't going to be functioning. It may still be there, but it's on a slope. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think you're describing some of the issues that I think you're trying to overcome, given what you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, continue, because I'm interested in, the 2 10-foot, the 2 10-foot lanes plus the first of all, road width is important for the emergency vehicles. So we want to try to stay as consistent, maybe vary, where we're absolutely backed against the wall, Mac. So
yeah,
keep going along that line. It sounds like you're at 31 feet. So that's pretty close to where, our, the town codes now are existing, but describe to me what, where it's going to vary.
Yeah, so that you're exactly right. We are not in terms of the cross section for pavement, for fire, for road, all of that stuff. for the bike lanes, none of that varies on any one of the 3 proposed road cross sections. The only thing that we're proposing to change is that we just don't, in summary, to make it succinct, is that we just don't have a 10-foot PUE on one side, or that PUE may be a 2-to-1 slope. And if you look at we sent out some materials just prior to the meeting. You may or may not have gotten it, but it has those cross sections on the last sheet. And the intent behind this actually is the exact same intent behind the retaining walls and also on the setbacks of the units. What we're trying to do with all of this is pull the units closer to the road, because the further the units get away from the road, the more mass grading it causes. So our objective, the city's objective, the city council's objective has always been try to have as little disturbance as possible to the open space. And so the wider the road widths get, the lower the retaining walls get, and the further away the homes get from the road itself, the more super pads and mass grading you end up having and more disturbed area. And on this property where we're dealing with a lot of topography, and we've done this, again, we've developed in a lot of topography just like this, it is so much easier to do it this way. And to your comment on the view sheds, Ralph, you can't see it in 2D, but you get a little bit better idea of what it looks like in 3D. On the villas, for example, where you actually have a road and units on either side of that road, what's really happening is on one side of the road you have an uphill unit, and then on the downhill side of the road you have a downhill unit. And so what we're able to still maintain those view sheds because of our topography. But instead of like on the downhill unit, what would happen is imagine if the grade is sloping off from the road, and I push that home out away from the street, I'm going to have to bring in more fill to have that home to be at street level. Do you know what I mean?
Or have a huge retaining wall in the back.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Ralph, if the reason why we went to moving on just quickly to the retaining walls, what we were the way that we read the code was, I think you could have one 10-foot wall, I think, and one 5-foot wall maybe, or something. I can't remember exactly. I could pull it up, but we don't mind having the breaks. We wouldn't mind having, like lower walls and more breaks. We're just trying to get to a place where the maximum height was a little bit higher, because again, if we retain, that means I don't have to, if I put in a retaining wall and then I step it back 5 feet and I go up, and then I step it back 5 feet and I go up again, and the total height on that is say 20 feet, then I'm actually disturbing less ground behind it. I don't have to cut back that slope to meet the grade. I know that if we were in person, I can show you exactly what we're talking about. It's hard conceptually maybe to picture it, but that's the intent of all of those things, is to maintain more undisturbed land and reduce our footprint.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you, Matt. Those things make sense. And you're right. I was, having worked around retaining walls for a while in a previous lifetime as well. Yeah, it's just a matter of you'll disturb less with higher walls, but over the shorter and more frequent cantilevers usually work better in the long term.
We
they
can
look
do that.
nicer, as they look nicer aesthetically, unless you have 10 of them, so to speak. So I get the trade-offs that you're trying to create, and maybe we can come to some kind of, compromise there, perhaps, so that it's not 6, it's not 10, but maybe it's 8, and then you cut back again. Anyway, food for thought. I don't know. Again, I haven't seen the exact dimensions of what you're proposing in those heights. And then, because
Ralph, could
all
I
of
just
that
jump in here real quickly? I'm sorry to interrupt, just so everybody knows, just to be clear, the way the current code reads right now is you can have a single 6-foot high retaining wall, or you can have 2 5-foot high retaining walls with the 5-foot step back, kind of that horizontal space that's planted. You can have 2 of those at 5 feet, so you can get up to 10 feet. That's the maximum allowance we have now. So again, anything beyond that would be a waiver and from the current code.
And you're right, Thomas. You're right. I remember that now. And what we're asking for, Ralph, is basically to go higher, because again, if we only went 10 feet tall, in order to catch that slope, we would have to flatten the hill to put it back at a slope that was like a 2-to-1 or something like that. And so if we did, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, McKay, it may be worth, the council has looked at this in significant detail. There were some significant concerns with regard to Lakeview and Deer Springs, where some of the retaining walls were reduced, eliminated, some reconfiguration, because there was some significant density. There were some things pulled out, pulled back. It may be worth looking at some maybe sample cross sections of what you're proposing, just because the amount of density you're trying to get in there is going to require those kinds of taller retaining walls. Otherwise, you're right, you have to masquerade virtually the entire site. It might be worth maybe showing some cross sections to see if council's comfortable with that.
Lars is on the phone and he has those cross sections. If he can share a screen, he can show everyone exactly what we're talking about.
And council, it's up to you if you want to do that tonight. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
We're prepared to do it if you guys would like to talk about it. He's on the phone and can share his screen and show everyone exactly what we're talking about.
Or we can wait. It's just totally up to you guys. We don't want, again, I feel like we're hijacking. We don't want to hijack your agenda. We know you have a lot that you want to get.
Todd and McKay, maybe it's worth you and I, me and you, Todd and McKay, and maybe Ryan taking a look at those and then presenting them to the council at the next meeting. But I think that would be very helpful. I mean, it's been a significant issue from day one with regard to kind of the masquerading of slopes.
yeah. And can I also, so I was looking, in preparation for the meeting, I was looking through some of the earlier planning commission meetings, and there was some discussion in front of the planning commission about how, there wasn't going to, that you guys were going to work within the code. And I'm just wanted to understand whether or not the plans had changed or just your need had changed.
No, I don't remember exactly what it was that they said or what we said in response to that, but we have always anticipated that there were going to be certain sections of the code that we needed to modify. And again, if you look at these sections, I don't think it's costing anybody anything. It's not unsafe. They're not any liabilities whatsoever. They're modifications in my mind to actually allow more responsible development of the site. And when it comes to the retaining walls, really the only 2 areas where we have significant need for this is going to be the hotel, primarily because we've got, all of the hotel and the condos, those are podium, like we're parking underneath it. And so, we're going to need retaining walls in those areas. And then also in the entry, like the entry right now is a 15% grade right as you come on in. Maybe you felt that as you drive up that. Well, that's not anywhere close to code. And so we're going to have to cut that down. And as we cut that down, naturally, we're going to have to create a retaining wall, a series of retaining walls right there without just blading back that entire slope, So, Polly, I think to your response, no, nothing has changed on our end. We've anticipated that we would have to get into this. I think now that we've got our preliminary grading plan, which we sent over to everybody today, and we have a concept plan that has been there's a lot of detail behind all this. Now we know exactly where it is that we're going to need those things.
Well, and if I can just add to that really quick, I think candidly, one of the things we're trying to prevent with all this is some of the things that have happened. You know, we drove through Shoreline and some of the other projects in the town, and they've got some really not only unsightly, but I mean, I'm not sure how they even pass code in terms of their grading and their cuts and, you know, the layback of the slope and runoff and all kinds of things. And so
But
Yeah,
to
they
be,
lot of those
didn't because
things-
they
I
were
think
pretty
that's
existing, yeah.
built before our codes were upgraded, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
That's-
and we
that's a-
recognize that. We're just trying to say
Well-
we recognize those things, and we're trying to not do it that way. We're trying to make it look good and prevent some of the issues that have happened, you know, previously.
my understanding is though that a lot of the changes that you've made kind of puts us back to our prior code, a lot of those requirements. So we probably will see something more similar to those pre-2021 code requirements, because
No.
that's what you've changed
don't-
it back.
I don't think
This
that's
is Ryan, and yeah, I think what Polly said is accurate. A lot of the changes are a step back towards the prior code with the height of the retaining walls and the road cross sections and grades. And so I think it is a step back towards shoreline. And I think at Planning Commission, we had talked about that Thomas and I had expressed a concern that the density was maybe not possible given the new code and the topography of the site. And I think the comment was that we'll have to work within the existing code. So I would suggest at a minimum that we send these revisions back to the Planning Commission and start there with whether or not the Planning Commission would agree to some, all, or none of them, and then bring it back to council. But I think the plan has changed from what the concept that the planning approved.
It hasn't, Ryan. It has not changed
It
at all.
has.
Like,
Your road cross
How?
sections, you want a retaining wall that's 30 feet high and the current code is 10.
that's not saying that we have changed anything. We have always known that we are going to have sections of the code that are going to be modified.
That is
And if
not
you're
what-
saying that it goes,
At the planning commission
saying-
meeting, you said that you weren't going to do that. And I think it's, behold, if we're going to change the
I don't
code,
remember
one, we
saying
should go
that.
to the planning commission. And two, I think the planning commission should be involved in changing the land use code because they were heavily involved in writing it. And I believe there was a statement where you said you were going to work within the code at the time, and now we're not.
I don't remember ever saying that I was going to work strictly within. Of course, in general, we work within the code, but we never anticipated that we were not through the MDA, which I will remind you, the MDA is the process through which the code is modified. It's implicit in an MDA. It happens every time we write an MDA, and it changes every time we go from planning commission to city council. It always changes, always. Every time we do this, and we never go back to planning commission to rehearse the changes that took place from planning commission to city council, because the city council asks for more information. They're constantly asking for more information.
To jump in there, I would agree that legally it's not necessary to go back, but that doesn't mean that the council might not find it a good idea because of some of the reasons that Ryan said. So
Well, the question is, if what you're suggesting, and I have driven through, in fact, we'll pull up images of shoreline right now. I don't see a single retaining wall in shoreline. In fact, you've got sheer 30-foot walls that go straight down, not even I don't even know what the slope is, onto the sidewalk. There's no sidewalk, right onto the road, rocks falling right onto the road. To say that this is a step back, Ryan, is complete misinformation.
I didn't
Well,
say
I
it
don't
was
think
all the
that
way
that's
back.
what he said.
I said it is a step back. I didn't say you're going all the way back to what shoreline is. I said it's a step back, and it is.
Can I just jump in really quick? And can I just use one quick example? I understand what you're saying, Ryan, but I think it's important to note that, you know, again, we understand the importance of the hotel. It's important to us. It's important to the town. It's important to everyone. The hotel, as McKay pointed out, is one of the main drivers for retaining walls. Sure, there's some other areas where there's retaining walls, but when you're developing, you know, in a mountainous area, that's going to be a given. But if retaining walls are limited to what the 2020 code shows, it is, I will say, impossible to develop a hotel anywhere in the town because it's such a big structure that there's no way to get that structure with the park and everything else without doing retaining walls. And so I think it's just important to note that, you know, while we're asking for one thing over here, in order to effectuate that physically and logistically on the ground, certain things are going to have to be done. And I think that's the point of, you know, that conversation is, yeah, sure, we're working within the code. There are some modifications that need to be made, and there's things that are going to need to happen in order to make the plan happen. But I just think it's important to know that.
10-foot retaining walls are completely arbitrary. Where you ever came up with that, I don't know, but that is wholly arbitrary, because that is one of the lowest standards that I've seen in just about any town with topography. And so to say that it can't be, to say that it can't be done responsibly, I mean, all you have to do is go to our 3D model and tell me that the entrance coming into that 3D model, which is actual, based on a real preliminary grading plan, based on actual grades, to say that that's both irresponsible and not attractive, I don't see that. I think it's an arbitrary standard. That's all we're saying. It can be done completely safely and attractively. And if it means, like to Ralph's point, that it just needs to be stepped back more often, we can do that. But we're going to find ourselves in a tough situation, like Todd said, on the hotel, if we're not able to do that, and in other places throughout the development.
So just to go back a little bit, and we took some of those standards directly from, I think, the architectural, the standards bodies that we looked at across in a couple of different ways. I can't quote where we picked up that information, but I know I looked at a number of different standards, as well as towns who have a lot of topography. So, give that as may. What I'd really be interested in, and I understand we live in a hill. So where are, I think you brought up a good point. The hotel, maybe in the back of the hotel that, there is, or the parking lot may need a higher retaining wall. It's not going to affect anyone, so to speak, behind a parking lot, for instance, if it's a multi-story parking lot. So it'd be nice to know where you think you described some of that. Give us a little bit more detail as to where the variations are going to occur, both on the roads, on the retaining walls, and on the setbacks. We haven't gotten to the setbacks, but I would like to know, we made improvements so that we preserve view sheds and things like that. So by widening the setbacks, but both the side yard setbacks, which was a real problem, and we didn't change the front and back. But so give us an idea. What are you thinking on the side, or at least maybe you're looking more at the front.
We did change the front because one of the issues is that we have vehicles sticking out into the road because on some of the twin homes there's not enough driveway to fit a current full-size pickup truck in the driveway. So there's a risk. I haven't, I think it's sounding like the next thing we need to do is spend time on the 3D model so that everybody can start to visualize what these things look like. But if what we're doing is creating an environment where people who choose to park their vehicles in the driveway have vehicles sticking out into the road, then that's an issue.
Yeah, totally agree.
I'm not saying that's the way it is. I'm just saying that we have to be conscious of that.
Yeah,
And
so I think it'd be useful to understand where your setback variations are likely to occur, whether it's on sides or fronts, and why the reasons behind that. That's all.
And I might just step in for just 1 second here, a couple of things. So with regard to retaining walls, the retaining wall section of the Hideout Town Code is very similar to the Park City and the Summit County Town Code with regard to setbacks in terms and safety recommendations. With regard to the building setbacks, Ralph, I think that there are some areas, and Todd and McKay could certainly jump in on this, where an attempt to keep the buildings closer to the road, maybe 13 or 14 feet, would potentially allow them to get some of the additional density up there and hopefully save on retaining walls. And those spaces may only allow for an angled parking space in front of the proposed, say, twin house, for example, but it wouldn't allow, to the mayor's point, a full pickup truck or a 20-foot length car or truck, depending. And so that's one of the things that I think we want to look at in a little more detail. And just I want to make sure that, Tim, I think you may have had a question or a piece of input. I saw that you were trying to get in on this, and I know you've done a little bit of review on this as well. You may want to make a point.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I mean, Ryan is, I agree 100% with Ryan. And I know the latest plans that you guys sent over had to address some of those right-of-way issues, and having the 10-foot PUE on both sides, for example, just to start there. But you still have some 2-to-1, like you had mentioned in earlier, some 2-to-1 slopes coming down. Now, that's stuff we can work with and work with you, but we need to make sure that we don't have such steep slopes coming down. And also town code calls for curb and gutter, which there still isn't any curb and gutter shown on your plans. So again, we need to move, so I mean, if I kind of holistically think of everything together, talking roadways, talking retaining walls, talking drainage, those all, as you know, work hand in hand. And I think, both sides of the road, we need to have streetlights, we need to have fire hydrants. And so a 2-to-1 slope coming down, for example, will not accommodate a fire hydrant is a great thing. And then as we have those no curb and gutter and you're showing swales, well, I can take you right down Shoreline Drive by Ross Creek entrance, because I was there today and trying to figure out how to best solve the solution of erosion along that east side of that road. And so I think there's a lot of things. And then finally, Wasatch County actually has a $1 million lawsuit for a retaining wall that is over, the 10 to 15 to 20 foot range that you're talking about. We've found in engineering, and I know this, that there's a reason why, and I'm sitting here trying to scroll through Harriman's code really quick, because they actually have a pretty good hillside overlay development code that talks about retaining wall heights, that the higher retaining wall it goes, the more loads you get on it, the more failure you get. And it may not happen within 5 to 10 years, but within 10 to 15 to 20, then it becomes an issue at times for various reasons: erosion, natural disaster, maybe someone runs into it, damages it, whatever it is. But there, like I say, I agree with Ryan. I think we need to make sure that you're moving along and you're doing some of the things that I know Ryan has requested all along that we still need to talk about. But kind of what he said right from the beginning, and I want to make sure that council knows, we need to make sure we have curb and gutter, and we need to make sure, and I know you've done this in regards to having the right of ways move to 51 feet, and thank you for that. But we need to have them all. You had 3 cross sections, and 2 out of the 3 showed the appropriate right of way width, but the third one did not, and it was still shown, I think, at 41. So anyway, thanks, Thomas, for letting me interject on that, because I was trying to wait for the right time to say some of these things.
Yeah, and I'll just respond by saying I don't care if it's if you don't want to have a 20-foot wall, and if we need to break it up, we can do multiple 6-foot walls like Ralph has talked about. That to me is not the issue. It's being able to, it's the overall maximum height at 10 that it's not doable, certainly in places. And I've developed in steep slopes. I've cut my teeth developing in 3,000 acres of steep slopes. And so I know what retaining walls can work and what can't, and I know the liability associated with them and what's safe and what isn't. And I know that it's done a whole lot more than 10 feet all over the place. Drainage swells, I mean, all you have to do is go up the street to Tuhey or down the street to Promontory. Those are also done. We talked to you guys about this. We certainly didn't hear from you in our meeting that we had to have curb and gutter. And so that's just new information to us.
Well,
we prefer not to have it because it's not the overall look and feel that we're going for. And in the town code, from what I saw, you guys allow 2.5-foot drainage swells. So I didn't think that was a departure from.
Yeah, and to be honest, McKay, I think it's been in Ryan's letter from back when in February. And so again, I'm just mentioning things again, right? And I know there's some give and take, and I do appreciate that. But like we said, just wanted to make sure that I had mentioned that, because again, as we move into some of the detention issues, and I know this was on your latest plan before the meeting today, it kind of showed some areas where you have some your future proposed retention detention basins, and that's awesome. And when we get to that point, we can talk about that. But there's just some concerns. How do we get all that water there, et cetera? And these other places like you're mentioning where they do have some of these swales, well, they have a little bit more resources and manpower than we currently do now. And again, it comes to more discussion, as you have said, that we can do. So like I say, I'm just pointing out the things that aren't in the code, or sorry, that are in the code that's not shown on your drawings. And that's all I'm doing for council.
Got it. And I'm glad, thank you for seeing the preliminary grading plan and the detention. We have literally, I mean, just to give you an idea, we've probably lost 7 estate lots because we are accommodating the natural drainage swell. So, we're doing the best that we can to try to accommodate that. And, we've got the detention basins that are in there, and we've had our engineer do all this calculations and feels like those work. And we're happy. We look forward to continuing having discussions with you guys on that stuff. So.
I guess, but just back to Ralph's point, if there's a certain places where
I think we lost you, Ryan.
Ryan, you accidentally muted yourself. There you go.
I'm sorry, I had a call came in while I was trying to talk. Sorry, to Ralph's point, what I was trying to say is I think that there may be merit to making some modifications or having some discussion in certain places, but as proposed, it's a carte blanche removing of certain requirements from the code everywhere. And one of the things is where there was discretion in the code, it said at the city engineer's discretion, it was crossed out and said at their engineer's discretion or an engineer's discretion. And so I think it's just way too broad at this point. I would agree with Ralph that bring it back and let's talk about 1 or 2 specific areas, and that might be a better discussion. But to just change our code entirely for the entire site, I think is problematic.
Well, it's not that broad as you're making it sound, and it doesn't cover the entire code, because I've gone through it literally line by line. We have tried to really focus on the areas that matter, on the steep slopes, on the road cross sections, and on the retaining walls, because at the end of the day, we're trying to develop it responsibly, but also disturb as little ground as we possibly can and not have massive cut and fill sections. So we'll continue to work with you, and we're happy to continue to have meetings and go through all of this with you, because it's not irresponsible development at the end of the day, what we're asking for. So
I would just make a recommendation that if there are text amendments made to the code, that we continue to have the town engineer be the final decision maker where it's already provided for.
This is the mayor. Sorry, I've had to move to phone because I have to go to the airport tonight. So, Thomas, if I'm signed out, so you should be able to share if you want to go back to the screen. Again, what I wanted to make sure we tried to cover tonight was that these things that are points of difference in understanding so far. I wanted to make sure that the council had a chance to understand where these areas are, what your staff is going through for you to try and get to the bottom of this stuff, and get to the point where you have enough information around these points of disagreement or misalignment, maybe is a better word, so that when it comes time to make a decision, you can make a decision. A well-informed decision. So we're not going to get all the answers tonight. That wasn't the intention. The intention was to bring you up to speed on the places that are still, having dialogue between the development team and the town team. I don't know exactly, what other pieces we have to cover yet, because I've had to walk away from the screen. I'm not looking at it visually, but I'm sure that what I want to do is just make sure that all that stuff gets out tonight. You got you heard from Ryan, you heard from Tim, you hearing from Thomas, you're hearing from Polly, and you're hearing from, McKay and Todd and their team. So if there's other stuff, keep going, please. But, I'm going to have to leave it to Thomas to kind of steer us through here.
Thanks, Mayor. So council, that was basically a review of number 5. Does anybody have any input, or I can move through to number 6 and we could take more specific input later. Any thoughts, input?
Hey, this is Chris. I think enough has been said on number 5. I think we should move on. And you guys, keep working through that.
Okay, great, thank you. Number 6 is design standards. This one may be fairly straightforward. Typically, the town council, whenever they've done an MDA, they have requested design guidelines, design standards be submitted, and that the town planner, planning commissioner, town council member are anticipated as a member of the DRC for that entity. We don't have any guidelines or standards submitted yet. Todd and McKay, could you maybe speak to that? Is that something you're thinking about submitting? Town council has typically requested that with an MDA. Any thoughts?
It usually, when we put together architectural design guidelines for a project like this, it is extensive. We engage our architects, and it is if it's married to the marketing of the development, which we will get into, meaning we hire a marketing team, and we hire a branding team, and we hire an architectural team, and all of them work in concert to come up with the theme and the style of the entire development. We don't have the time, that just is a very long process that then gets folded into our CC&Rs. And so, to be honest, Thomas, I don't know that I see that component of this being done at this juncture. It certainly would prior to any preliminary or final plats being submitted, obviously. It would be a part of our CC&Rs that would have to get recorded against the property. We just are used to doing that as a phase 2 rather than as a phase 1, because it requires just so much time. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Maybe I have an idea, McKay. What if that was something that we worked on as a condition of MDA approval?
Sorry, say that again.
How about as a condition of MDA approval? Because it would need to be before plats so that town council knew exactly what they were getting, right? In terms of architecture, style, in terms of landscaping, et cetera. What if we did something as a condition of approval prior to
can we make it a condition? Can we make having that a condition to recording or recording our first plat? Meaning we would not. So this is what I'm saying. We need the MDA in order to close, right? Then we've got to be able to close on the property. And so could we make having the architectural guidelines at that point, we could sit down with you and work and pull you in on that, and then make having those in place and recorded against the CC&Rs, recorded against the property, a condition to recording a plat. Meaning we can't turn a spade of dirt until that is in place, and then you guys have control over preliminary and final plat approvals. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Council, do you want to weigh in? You've typically required them as part of the MDA. Are you comfortable waiting until prior to plat approval recordation, I guess I would say?
We typically wanted to know up front, at least conceptually what we're getting in terms of, design standards. And I know you want to put it off and, tie it to marketing, but again, we've asked for this in the past, and other developers have been able to provide it.
I don't think it has
Okay.
to be detailed design, it doesn't have to be your detailed architectural renderings.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
We-
of what you're-
Do you have
McKay, it
something-
might be something where we're
Thomas?
thinking about like precedent images and kind of what
Yeah.
makeup of a DRC would be. Maybe we can make it a little bit more simplistic up front and
Okay.
then something more extensive prior to
Sure.
plat or something like
Yeah.
that.
If you've got, Thomas, something that is an example, what we do is pretty extensive, and the branding of the development is important to us, and the story behind the brand is tied to the story and the brand inform the architecture. And so, but we will, if you could just send us over something, and if we can create a simplified version of it, we'll do the best we can. And hopefully, if it changes or gets tweaked or something like that, and we bring it back as a part of our CCNRs, you guys will understand that, maybe slightly modified, because we haven't just with the understanding, we haven't gotten into that level of detail yet.
Nope.
So my question is, what does that word prior mean? That's can be a broad word, but Thomas, you were, I think you were talking initially about almost like working backwards from, so to speak, final vote, whatever that might be, and getting a timeline built here. So is that going to be part of our discussion here, so that we have a better understanding of where this information will flow back to the council, over the timeline, working backwards from the date that we want to, that we kind of mutually agree to? Is that something that we're going to discuss tonight? Because I think that's, we getting information a day before just doesn't work,
No, Ralph, that's a good point. I think that before we end this meeting tonight, we should have an understanding of what our next meetings are and kind of what materials will be presented. I think in fairness to the public, for the public hearings, to be transparent, I think we do want to do that. So yeah, that does make sense to me. And I think that we owe it to the community to do that before the end of the evening. So yeah, as we finish up here tonight, we'll settle on some dates so that people know what's forthcoming.
Hey, Thomas, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ralph.
No, I was just going to say, including the design review. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, that's correct.
I was just going to say, I don't know if now's a good time or not, but you talked about public comments and those kinds of things. I don't know if it's merits. I know we were asked to do the neighborhood meeting. We had the neighborhood meeting a little over a week ago. And I don't know if the council would like to see, we keep talking about this 3D video. I mean, it's like a 2-minute video. I mean, would everyone like to see it? I think it's worthwhile. It shows some conceptual imagery of kind of housing types and architectural styles, but it really gives a really, really good idea of what this project looks like and how it lays out. And I don't know. I think it'd be helpful if everyone wants to spend 2 minutes, and then we can also talk about the feedback. We got some really great feedback from that town hall meeting, where we had, almost 10% of the town was there.
Do you want, why don't we do this? Why don't we go through the next, what do we have? 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 4 more to go. Why don't we go through those? We'll try to be somewhat expeditious. Then you guys could go through your model and give us an update with regard to that. Does that make sense? We'll kind of get through this since we're 6 out of 10 into the
yeah, that's great.
Into the details. Does that work? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, whatever you guys like to do.
And again, council, don't hesitate to interrupt me at any time. Number 7 is contributions to the town, and right now what is being proposed is 2.5 million for a pedestrian tunnel, noted at 500,000 per year for the first 5 years. And the in addition to that, there was some recognition that if the developer does propose to convey the rights of way to the community, that does come with some staff commitments, some snow plowing commitments, some maintenance commitments, some repair commitments, some ongoing maintenance commitments for roads. I think the proposal, again, Todd and McKay, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was for 300,000 for some snow maintenance equipment and or plowing equipment as part of a secondary commitment to the community. And so the question for the council is, are you comfortable with this? This kind of ties back to the fiscal analysis study, and are you comfortable with that? And recognizing that ongoing maintenance is ongoing forever, does that feel like a an acceptable compromise. And certainly, Tim, if you have any input here, you should weigh in as well. You have much more familiarity with the actual cost of maintenance.
And Thomas, just one little clarification.
Sure.
What we had proposed was $500 per every time we pulled a building permit. $500 would be paid out of every permit.
That's
And
right.
so
it came to based on 600 units, it was 300,000, but it could vary a little bit based on the final number of units.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to be clear, we are not attempting to try to cover the city's expenses ongoing. We're just saying, look, I can't even remember where this came out of. I don't know. It's just one of the other things that we were responding to, I guess. But just to get it, so the town has a little bit of a jump start, we offered to do that. That is also, the way that it's written in the MDA is if the town at some point ever chooses to levy an impact fee, it would be credited towards the impact fee that we would ultimately have to pay on roads.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Thomas, the fee was meant to offset, a portion of the costs of any maintenance that would come along with this community. And I know Rob's analysis showed 380,000. I haven't seen the backup for that. I don't know where that came from, but the idea was that these impacts, as we added residential units, we would be adding we called it a road maintenance fee that would help offset some of those costs.
And just out of curiosity, when you say 380K, do you know if Rob was estimating just the maintenance, or was that the total cost of the roads in the development, or was it more than that?
I don't know what that number is. I mean,
in terms
I
of
haven't
replacement
seen
cost, what might that be?
He had three components, I think, in his spreadsheet, if that's what you're asking. And I'd have to pull this up.
I thought I saw when you were scrolling through it, it had a public works line item. It
public
had
safety, public works, and general government. And and it's skewed towards 2/3 of it or a little less, maybe about 60% is general government. So, the cost of adding, I guess, people, administration costs, public safety and public works was the other piece of it. So in year 6, I think it was 212,000 of the 380 was for general government. Public safety, public works was 167. So, but roughly split along those 3 lines. That's how we calculated this. I don't know what went into it. So, because I'm not looking at the.
It'd be interesting to talk. It'd be interesting to talk to Rob about that, because that should actually flatten as you scale. Brings me back to the prior point that I had made earlier, that your expenses, you get economies of scale as the property grows, meaning you don't add 1-to-1 staffers every time you continue to grow the city. And so that number should flatten over time, not increase as the overall density increases. But it'd be interesting to see the backup on that.
One other thing is, in the past, we have, I have been cautious because if the infrastructure is being put in by PID money, then those roads need to be dedicated to the town, and that's the majority of the roads there. But I did speak with our PID council, and he affirmed that the HOA or the developer then would probably hand it over to the HOA, could be responsible for maintenance and plowing, even though it's still a town road. So that's another thing to consider to try to make the cost to the town less.
We could pay for all of the town's roads.
Yeah, I guess just to be clear, if we were maintaining our own roads, or I should say our homeowners were responsible for paying, as well as us responsible for paying for maintaining our roads, then that $300,000 fee, that maintenance fee, would go away, because that was meant to offset a portion of those costs. So hopefully that's understood.
Todd, do you have an understanding of what would be the cost of replacement roads? So say when you're looking at like 10 or 12 years in, do you know what the cost of replacement roads are? Ryan or Tim, you may have an idea. What are we looking at?
I don't know offhand. I mean, we'd have to do the math on what the cost is there, but roads do not need to be replaced under today's standards. We looked at the roads town section or the town's road section. And with that section, it's a pretty stout section. There would be no need to replace roads. Obviously, you need ongoing maintenance, but there wouldn't be any need to replace roads after 10 or 12 years.
Which is, I'm guessing, what that $380,000 includes.
Oh, I thought that was the
Unfortunately.
500. I thought that was for the 500 per unit for snowplow maintenance. Was that for?
No, what I meant
No.
is, I'm sorry, Thomas, we're confused. The numbers are so close. What I meant is in Rob's expense tab is probably
okay.
allocated some funds for road maintenance in the public works
Yeah,
budget.
and Ryan and Tim will know way better than we will in terms of, I mean, we can go do the math. I'm sure those guys know as good as anybody what road replacement costs are. And we can figure it out as well if you'd like to know what the exact number is, but that's obviously a figure that's going to come into place over years and years and years and years.
I appreciate that you had that number in there, and this is Tim. And I think one of the things that my concern is, looking again at the phasing plan that we received right before the meeting, and I know you just mentioned it, is you're only going to give X amount of dollars per permit. Well, we have maintenance needs now. As soon as those roads go in, we're playing catch up at that point, if that makes sense. And so, something to think about that maybe to relook at something up front versus per permit. And again, because $500 or whatever you said it was, we're playing, we spend that in a week's worth of gas, for snow, when it comes to snow season. So things like that is just something that we probably need to continue to talk about and feel comfortable with. And again, for crack sealing and maintenance, like you're talking about, as we're salting and as our pavement goes through freeze and thaw cycles, crack seal becomes a big deal. Here up in this area, and you're usually doing it, pretty much every 5 to 10 year range, at least once. So something to think about, and it is very much appreciated. But I think we need to dial in a little bit more, if that's something that is still on the table for us to talk about.
No, thanks, Tim. That's helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Ryan, did you have any thoughts or input here, or council, any questions on this? What we can do, what I can certainly do is work with Todd and McKay to get a better understanding of, as well as Ryan and Tim, to get a better understanding of what those final costs would be in terms of both equipment, the person power to take care of that equipment, as well as maybe estimated maintenance costs per mile for the amount of new road.
And Thomas, we can jump off this topic, but we didn't propose this with the intent to cover all of the city's costs to maintain the roads going forward. That, like, we throw out, I don't know, I think Todd and I are getting a little bit of deal fatigue on this. We throw out these things that we feel like are generous offerings to help, and then the seed is then planted, and all of a sudden it begins to grow and grow and grow. Again, we're going back to the $380,000 the city collects out of property taxes and for expenses. I would assume that in that line item, the public works line item, that there's got to be a maintenance budget. I don't know, but I would assume that's the case. And so, anyway, just keep that in mind, I guess, as we continue to talk about it.
No, we'll do that. I think that what might be easiest, unless council has any questions, is to pull you and Todd together with maybe Ryan and Tim to get a better understanding of what estimated costs might be. I know that early on there was an understanding that these would be private roads maintained by the HOA. If they are public roads, we'll just need to establish a maintenance number.
And I would love to see it be private.
Right, well, it can't be private, but there is a way to have us not do the maintenance or the plowing, which might, be a cost savings for the town.
So it
but
looks like,
but
by the way, how Rob calculated this was against current cost per assessed values, and just took a took a number based upon that, and then applied it to the value of your property. So I'm just trying to drill into a spreadsheet while you guys are talking here. Hey, I got one more question. How did you come up with the formula for the affordable housing? Is that 5%?
I didn't plug in a number for it. You're talking about the total number of units?
It says, under B, what is it, number 3? Applicants are proposing 28 units of affordable housing, the very last line in contributions to the town. How did you come up? Was there a formula that you guys worked out? It looks like it's 5%, but I'm just guessing here.
No, we didn't have a specific formula. We just thought that was an adequate number. We actually had come down off our density, and then had a request to add back in affordable housing units. And so we added back in 28 units of affordable housing units, which is, probably a good number. They will largely, depending on how the AMI is calculated, be for rent product. I don't think that we can get to a product based on the AMI that would be a for sale product. So if the city doesn't want it, let us know. That was something, again, that we're responding to a request from the council.
Thomas, can you give us any input on that one?
We don't have a particular affordable housing requirement. We note that it is an amenity that we would like to see in our MDAs. We don't have a particular requirement. In this case, 28 units of affordable housing based on the proposed 600 units would be approximately 4.6, almost 5%. And so that seems to be that's a pretty good percent. In Park City, it typically hovers around the 15%. But again, we don't have a specific requirement for that. So that would really be a council recommendation in terms of an amenity for the MDA, in terms of kind of the give-get comparison for the upzone request.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
As we work with Todd and McKay prior to the next meeting, we'll hone in a little bit more detail on the numbers. I know that Todd and McKay have slightly altered the density as of earlier today, and so it's reduced a little bit, and so it's hovering right out maybe the 600 instead of the 610 unit mark. And so maybe what we'll do is come up with a better analysis of how many units are casitas, how many units are townhouses, how many units are quadplex or triplexes, how many units are estate lots, how many are part of the hotel, the condos, et cetera. And then we can give you a better understanding of what that percent is and where it lives. I think that might be a little bit more helpful.
Hey, Thomas, I just want to clarify that was a gross exaggeration. It's actually 599, not 600.
Not 600. Okay, I was over about 5.0001%. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. Number 8 is we'll try to move through these last 3. They're hopefully fairly quick. Undisturbed land. I know there has been a number of questions and requests for information regarding undisturbed land. I think part of it is definitional. And so just to be clear, as we worked through this with the Planning Commission, the idea of undisturbed land was land that is not touched. So the landscaping remains, the grading remains. I think that as Todd and McKay have looked at this density, there is a significant need to do more grading. And so they've started to look at open space versus undisturbed land. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that undisturbed land, again, leaves the vegetation, doesn't masquerade the site, doesn't change the grading. It's kind of preserved land. We have orange fencing, limits of disturbance around that area. I think that this percent has reduced. Todd and McKay, again, correct me. I know you're working on a concept plan that will illustrate this for the town council, but you'll need to provide a map, a plan that shows areas that will be preserved. And I think you're looking at more of the 5 to 15% of the site that would be undisturbed, given the significant grades up there. And so this kind of comes back a little bit to the issue of sensitive lands overlay. So the town council's current ordinance says that anything over 30% grade, which is considered steep slope, is not to be touched. I think Todd and McKay, again, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have a plan yet for this, but you're proposing that we would not utilize that ordinance, and that some of those lands would be actually built on or kind of graded and the vegetation removed. And so I think you're looking more in the 5 to 15% that would be undisturbed, again, untouched, but you're looking at maybe 30% of the property, the 112 acres, would be open space. So you guys can jump in here at any time. I haven't seen any plans.
Yeah, you're right. I think there was probably initially some confusion over open space versus undisturbed land. And I don't know how the numbers got so high on the undisturbed portion of it. But we also sent over, again, this was not like everything that we needed to file the application, everything that was needed in order to make decisions and all that kind of stuff. The MDA, the concept map, and the rezone has been delivered in accordance with public noticing and everything else. The backup information that we provide per request to the city council is, I sent some of that stuff over today. Thomas, I've sent some of it, to early last week and stuff like that, or last week. But yes, one of those sheets and the stuff that we sent over today shows the difference. There are a couple sheets that show where there are 30% slopes and where we are proposing to disturb those 30% slopes. By and large, we've got sections where we've got to cut a road across a section or something like that. Or the hotel has a section. There's a couple sections in the estate lots, and we've got to review those because I think some of our lots in there just don't work because they are too steep. So, but we've got those sheets that we sent over to you, and we're going to continue to we will continue to refine that over the next week or so. And we'll get with you, Thomas, on it. Sorry, go ahead.
McKay, if I could just add on to that, I just a couple points of clarification. There was a note in there in terms of the planning commission. We did not sit. We described 45% open space, and someone at the planning commission understood that to be undisturbed. We've never said we'd have 45% of the site be undisturbed. So I just want to clarify that. Thomas, your number, we are right around 15%, maybe even slightly higher of undisturbed area, and still at that 45% of open space. So from where we were at planning commission to where we're at today has not changed, but I think there was some confusion as to the description of those spaces and how they were being used. And you're right, undisturbed, as we understand it, is untouched, ungraded, open space. But that is different than traditional open space that may be landscaped, that may be graded, that may be refined, etc.
That's right. I think the map that was submitted to the planning commission said undisturbed land. So I think that's where that came from, that misunderstanding. Because I think you guys called it undisturbed. You may have meant something different, but I think the planning commission and town staff took it as undisturbed because that's what the plan said. So that's probably where that came from. I don't know if council wants to weigh in here. There's been a number of issues with regarding to the amount of disturbance to land. This does again tie to portions of the code, the sensitive lands overlay, and just the amount of density for MDAs. I don't know if council wants to weigh in on this, if there's a concern with regard to the percent being undisturbed being much lower than what was originally thought when it was presented to the Planning Commission. I'm certainly open to input and guidance here.
Hey, Thomas, this is Chris. I feel like there are certain items we've covered, number 5 in your report, and then now this undisturbed land, number 8. It feels like it really needs to go back to the Planning Commission. So, because there seems to have been a misunderstanding there, as you're mentioning with undisturbed land, but also, you know, those items that we have spent so much time on, the roads, right of way, sensitive land, stormwater basin locations, retaining wall heights. This is all like Planning Commission details that it doesn't seem like when they sent us their recommendation that this had all been discussed.
Chris,
So-
neither had the pavilion, neither had the amphitheater, really, neither had the 20,000 square feet of commercial, neither had a myriad of other things that you guys asked us to do that we've delivered on, you know? So, yeah, I just, the Planning Commission is a recommending body. And, you know, I know Polly has covered this with regards to legality and whether or not the town council wants to do it or not, but it's up to you. But, you know, we have literally done, I know that you have a differing opinion. It's your opinion. Okay. We have literally crossed over river, hail, and stream to accommodate the requests of the Planning Commission and of the City Council. And so to suggest that we go back to Planning Commission on stuff that is an evolving document, that is the nature of entitlements. As you go from Planning Commission to City Council, they evolve. It's what happens. To suggest that we have to go all the way back to do that, I just find as a complete and utter waste of the last 6 months of effort that we have put into this and the numerous concessions that we have voluntarily made. The idea that we go back and just take another hack at the tree after we give and give and give and give, I don't know that I see that happening on our end.
Oh, okay. Well, when we get to the end game here, which is to set a schedule for our next meetings, I think you're going to find that the council has other business to attend to besides this development proposal and this, you know, request for an upzone. And there are some things that our Planning Commission is well equipped to be able to work through that doesn't require all this council time. And then we could get, you know, effective recommendations from our recommended body. That's why I'm suggesting Planning Commission. Because, you know, when we get to the next, like I said, when we start talking about, well, when are we going to meet next? Well, I don't want to meet on this again next week because the council has our regular meeting agenda to deal with for our regular meeting. And this, we can't have this, you know, derailing us from our normal course of business. So my, you know, thoughts about sending some things back to the Planning Commission are to actually help move this along faster for us. And I would actually really like to hear from my fellow council members what they think. Sorry, Colin, you guys, Ralph, you want to go first?
I mean, you know, being back on the Planning Commission, I'm sure, I don't see that as being a bad rec at all, Chris. I kind of agree with you because I don't think the town council has the time to go and, you know, have every meeting dedicated to this. We have to do some normal course of business. I understand where you're coming from, Mac, on, you've gotten kind of over the hump of that. But some of this stuff does reflect what a planning commission should have been doing. So we're just trying to compress the time cycles here. I don't think I don't think it's a bad idea at all, actually. So, just it may not fit with your time frame. So that's why I think we need to understand, working backwards from what the time is on this, that we couldn't get some more educated opinion to get back to the council. So we're just not embedded with just this development with all our time. So my opinion, yeah, send it back. If we can get some readout from the planning board, I don't think it's a bad idea.
Right. Thanks, Ralph. Appreciate that. Carol, how do you feel?
Yes, I totally agree with Chris and Ralph, and I just like to comment that I have had one planning commissioner actually talk to me about it and saying that she was very frustrated by the fact that so many things had changed from what they had given their original approval to, that they really would like it to go back to the planning commission. I mean, it was one person, it wasn't the entire planning commission, but I think it's appropriate that it go back to them.
Sherry?
I would like to get some opinions from the planning commission. I too spoke to a planning commissioner that was a little frustrated with the way things were going, and I was a little concerned with things in the MDA as well. So, it is a long process. It's not a quick process to do such a big project.
Thanks, Sherry. Bob?
Hey, Ralph, you're still on. Where are we with getting the polling going for all the town constituents? Has that been sent out yet?
No.
It should be to SurveyMonkey by the weekend.
Okay.
Well, we
All right.
haven't come, hey, Jan, on that piece, were we going to go over some of the survey questions? So because I think it brought up to, some of the stuff that came out tonight, we could even factor in. So Jonathan, on that topic, I think that's a really good point as well. And maybe we wait. If we have to go back to the planning commission, I'm not even sure I would do the survey this weekend. I think that should come out after the planning commission has another review, so that can be factored into anyone's survey thinking, so to speak. That would be my 2 cents here at that point. But so maybe that comes. When is the next planning commission meeting? I think it's the third Thursday of this month, and maybe we can get this on the calendar and get the survey done right after that.
Yeah, here's my 2 cents. And out of respect for the time and effort and the money of the developers right here, I have yet to have a single person, a single resident of the town come up to me and go, "Hey, Bob, you know what I would love? Another 600 housing units in the town of Hideout." So, I don't even know if we should be going down this path right here. We still have the Richardson Flats area, and I know there's some ambiguity on that as to whether or not that's going to get developed, and as to what time frame. But there's a lot of political horsepower behind that. That would serve as the town center. So I'm just not seeing the advantage to the town from what this development is proposing, especially given that it's going to be 3, 4, 5 years out. And by then we'll have more clarity as to what's going on in Richardson Flats. So I feel like I don't want to have developers feel like we're stringing them along or anything. I'm not sure that we really have the public support to allow such a massive change to basically quintuple, if I'm not mistaken, our density, our zoning, to have this development go through. I just don't see what benefit there is for the town. I just don't see what justifies. Anyway, but let's hear from the townspeople. Let's have the survey go out and let's see what they want to do about it, because I don't want to waste anybody's time or money. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Hey, Polly.
Can I just in case someone has been under a rock, that the Richardson Flat, that the annexation, as we all know, was deemed void by the 4th District Court.
We are intending to appeal it as soon as a final judgment is entered, but as of right now, it's void ab initio, which means kind of from its inception. So that's where we're at right now, but it's a good point. We won't know what's going to happen with it until after it goes through the appeal.
Thank you, Polly. So Polly, I noticed the mayor has dropped off the call. I guess he had to go to the airport. So does that mean I just take over as to continue running the meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, apparently. All right, so I know, Thomas, you did not get to go through the remainder of your items here, and is this something you want to go through quickly? I know that we noticed this as a public, I believe we need to take public input during this meeting as well.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think that we're basically we're pretty much done with the report. Connectivity will continue to work with Ryan. I know that he unfortunately had to drop off the call as well. So we'll work with him and Todd and McKay with regard to that connectivity. There is a proposed connection to Golden Eagle. There was a recommended connection to the main access road to Golden Eagle that goes through some private property. So that has some issues that we'll have to work through, but we can work on that with Ryan and Tim and Todd and McKay. So I'll take care of that one. The last one, number 10, was delineation of housing types and numbers. And we discussed that a little bit earlier on in the evening. And that was with regard to number of single family lots, number of casitas, number of villas, number of townhouses, that kind of thing. And I think that we'll work with Todd and McKay. I think they committed to getting us that. And I think they're probably getting closer to having those numbers in pretty pretty detailed format. So we'll work to get those for the town council.
Thank you. That was very quick.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. If it's all right with everyone, I'd like to open this up to public input. So if you have any input, please raise your hand. Alicia, can you help me recognize folks that are lined up to speak?
You bet. So it looks like we've got Carol Thomas, who has her hand up.
Okay, let's start with Carol.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, so I have a couple of issues that I just wanted to discuss. The first is the undisturbed land. I'm kind of concerned that the area would be mass graded, much like Lakeview Estates, Deer Springs. I'm hoping that we'll see some more open space there. I'm not sure what really undisturbed land is. And with their retaining walls, I'm not sure what that means. So I'd like to have some clarification on that. I'm also very concerned about the water issue. We all live out there and see the lake level. Where's the water going to come from for 600 plus housing units? Something of concern. You all mentioned the amphitheaters. How many do we need out there? Might it be better left for open space? And what will be at those amphitheaters? The next concern that I know you all have is the hotel. So there's the Black Rock Resort Hotel off of the 248. And what is the success of that? What's the occupancy on that? What's the likelihood that more people will come to this area, as well as Mayflower and Park City? So those are just things I would like y'all to think about.
All right, Carol, thank you. Appreciate your input. All right, Alicia, who else do we have who is lined up for input?
I'm not seeing anybody else, but if we just want to just go over the process of raising hand. So you want me to do that, or would you rather?
Would you mind?
Sure.
Thank you.
So if you would like to speak, then you just need to click on the bottom of the, or on the bottom of the screen, there should be a little thing that says raise hand. And that way I can give you the ability to unmute. And if you are dialing in on the phone, then you just need to hit *9, and that will raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute when I give you the ability for that.
And as we wait for people, Chris, if you don't mind, I'll just answer one of Carol's questions, and that is, we will make sure that we define undisturbed versus open space. And so again, undisturbed is untouched, ungraded landscape, native landscape remains. And so we'll define that for you to make sure that that is understood. And we'll work with Todd and McKay to indicate that on a map as well.
Thank you, Tom. All right, I don't think we have any other public input.
Chris, do you want Lars to put up the 3D model so you can see that?
Hold on one second. Alicia, were you saying something?
Yeah, sorry. I think that Carol had a follow-up.
Okay,
question.
yeah, can you unmute Carol again?
Sure. It looks like she's already unmuted.
Hey, Carol, go ahead.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so my concern about this undisturbed land is I live at Deer Waters, and I look across from my area that is, it's area that's designated as open space. And it is such a steep grade that it's open space, but it's not usable for anyone. And they've put down all that, like, I don't know, hay and something rollout. And so that's considered open space, but it's open space, but isn't usable or isn't natural. And it really, it looks hideous. So my concern is if you're going to reduce the undisturbed land from 45% to 5 to 15%, is it going to be graded and covered with this fake grass that may or may not grow in our drought environment? So how does that look to people who are going to be spending a lot of money on homes and in an environment that looks natural? So that's something I'd like everyone to consider.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Okay, any other last chance, any other public input? All right, with that, I'm going to close public input. Thank you very much. So McKay, you had a question. If you could show your, you said it's a few-minute video?
Oh, well, yeah, I was just wondering if the council wanted to see the 3D video. Sherry mentioned that it wasn't coming through. I don't know if anybody else had seen it and if they were interested in taking a look at it, but it would form you a little bit on how the retaining walls work and some of the architectural theme that we're going with, and you get a better sense on why it is that we're talking about some of these text amendments in the code. But
I had one thought before we go on, Chris, if we could.
Yeah.
And it goes to Bob's point about getting more input. And, Carol Thomas, thank you for participating. We don't get enough participation in these meetings. We didn't even open this up until 9:40, so to speak. So I can't blame anybody for not sitting around in their evening saying, gee, I'm going to wait for 3.5 hours to share a comment. And I guess back to your point, Bob, I just don't feel like we've gotten enough input from other folks. And the ones that we do, like Carol, who does participate in giving us input. So that's one thing I would be interested in, and I didn't go to your open house, but my next door neighbor said that they did like what they heard. So I think there are some varying opinions. We just haven't gotten that.
Well, Ralph,
I would love to hear, anything you could share. I mean, obviously you're taking a one-sided view, which is yours, but it'd be nice to hear, how did the open house go?
it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. I wish you would have all been there, because it's typical of this kind of thing, that people who, and I'm not suggesting this is Carol. You have valid concerns and opinions, and we respect that, but it is just sort of typical that most of the people that have negative things to say show up at the city council meetings. And we had probably 50 people there. Thomas was there. I don't know if he went around talking to people, but we had the most positive, warm, wonderful response. People that actually said, "Oh my gosh, we love this. We cannot wait for this to happen. I've been waiting for something like this to happen." We had an incredible response from everybody that was there. I can't think of one person that showed up that walked away without saying something extremely positive to us and being super excited about what was coming. And, we get bogged down in the weeds. We lose sight of everything that's going on. It's not until you get up on the estate and you start to imagine and see what's actually going to happen and what it is that we're proposing, where you actually catch the vision, and you start, maybe, perhaps maybe we all take for granted the things that we actually are proposing up there. And they certainly didn't. They heard it all and were like, wow, this is incredible. And we showed them the 3D model and they loved it. So, I mean, there may be people that walked away and didn't share that opinion, but I certainly did not catch that from one person. And we had so many people voice their opinions.
Well, and I don't know, Thomas, if you'd be willing to share your thoughts. I mean, you were there. I know Donna was there. I know Bob was there. I'd love to hear from, obviously that's our perspective. We thought it went really well. We didn't have anyone who was really negative or had anything negative. There's a lot of good questions and a lot of good dialogue, but I'd love to hear if there was another opinion from those who were there. Just in terms of anything to the contrary to that, because we were actually pleasantly surprised with, one, the turnout, and two, the reaction. And we had a couple people that came up and thanked us afterwards and said, "Hey, thank you for doing this. We think this is going to be incredible up here. We're really excited for all this."
All right.
Bob, I don't know if you have any comments. You may want to weigh in. Todd McKay. Yes, this is Thomas. I was there. I didn't really talk to a whole lot of people that were there. I know there were some folks from out of town who were interested in the property. I didn't talk to too many who were there. Bob, you may have spoken to some. Do you want to catch us up?
Yeah, just a few people I did talk to. They said, they said, "Hey, the project looks like it's pretty cool, but I'm not sure it's right for the town. I just don't quite see, the benefit that would be guaranteed in a timely fashion. The project if you look at the project in and of itself in a vacuum, yeah, it looks good. I think it looks good, but yeah, I'm just not feeling it. If that makes any sense."
I'll make a comment. I was there and I talked to 3 or 4 different people. Every one of them expressed great concern about water. That was the number one issue that I kept hearing, is where is the water going to come from? And the other thing that I heard was the density, that they were very concerned about the density and what it would make our town look like. And also there were a couple questions about all these amenities like the clubhouse and the pavilion or whatever was proposed to go in, however you want to define it. Is that going to be open to the townspeople that live on the other side of the highway? And then the highway was also an issue, that how are people going to get there? Are they going to have to drive to access the amenities that are available? So those were the concerns that I heard. I felt that not everybody was positive about it.
All right, thanks, Carol. Thanks, Bob. Very, very interesting. And it does, underscore things that Carol Thomas mentioned as well, with her concerns. So, it's not all roses. Todd and McKay, the people that live here. And, there are definite concerns. They're worried about what this will do to our character. This could be the greatest or the worst decision we ever make. We just have to make sure we try to make it the greatest decision that we make. So I know you asked if you could show a video. I'm looking at the time, and I'm wondering if you could do that 3D model showing at the next meeting. Here's my proposal about going forward, and I'd like the council's input. I'd like to have the planning commission take a look at the current plan on their May 19th meeting, and send do a review and send a possible recommendation back to the council that we would then ask if we could agree to meet on the optional meeting date. So that would be, I think, June 26th for the council. That's a Thursday. Because on the May 12th meeting, we have our normal business that we have to take care of, which is next week. So that's a proposal. I'd like to have a discussion about that and what you guys think.
Well, what date did you throw out, Chris, for the a follow-up meeting?
So for the council follow-up meeting for this particular topic only, it would be the June 26th. So that's the second, that's the fourth Thursday.
I think you meant May 26th.
May 26th.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I wrote down May 26th. Correct. Thanks. It's getting late for me. So that would be May 26th for the next council meeting that we, focused on Boulders.
Well, I can tell you, I won't be here. So I'm traveling that week. But in any case, then I don't think I'd be able to make that meeting then. But in any case, we've been banding around dates anyway, so it easily could be a June 1 or June 2. So that's less of an issue. But I just thought I'd share that. But yeah, I'd say we probably need another meeting around this shortly after the planning board gets together on the 19th.
Yes.
Is that what I'm reading? Looking at my calendar here, while we're both looking at calendars. And again, maybe if we can just spend, if we can't get to it tonight, we got to get to a closer point of for Todd and Mac, as well, working back, kind of a work backwards date. So, what are we going to accomplish on, call it that May 26th, June 1st date? And, how can we get closer to some decisions? When are we going to get out the survey? Does it follow? So I think we need to get some specificity around that. And I think we need to get some specificity to the planning board. So, where we're looking at the variances for road widths and setbacks and all the items in, I think, number 5, as particularly, we should get those specifics to the planning board. I mean, that's what they should be reviewing. And if we don't, then we're not, we're both not doing our job here, and this is going to drag on. So we need some feedback from the planning board on those items, those and maybe more. So I'll stop there.
Just so I understand, Ralph, what you guys had said earlier was that you wanted to send it back to the Planning Commission specifically for those items relating to the code. Is that what you're saying? We go back to the Planning Commission to discuss the road right of width, the retaining walls, the sensitive, those items pertaining to the code?
So section 5 in Thomas's report. And also I had recommended section 8, that undisturbed land, because there seemed to have been a disconnect with what the Planning Commission thought. you had said and what what Thomas's analysis is telling us about undisturbed land. So it would be those two areas in particular that we would want the planning commission for sure to take on.
But they're not going to give us any relevant feedback until they get the specifics of, again, what those variances you might be looking at. So even if you haven't, said, well, it's going to be a 4.5 foot, wall, cantilever, whatever. I think you got to give them a range, your best effort on the specifics. I think that's what the planning board does. And we should get, they should be in the loop here.
Okay, so according to Thomas's sheet, 5 and 8.
Yes, and then the code section that Polly referred to, 10.08.34, that was, pretty much going to be wanting to be gotten relief from, in other words, taken out. So talking about that. Polly, is that the correct?
Yeah, it's 10:08:34.
Yep.
And then actually, I haven't looked at the requirements for public trails, but that's 10:08:32. But the question is how are they meeting 10:08:34 in any capacity? Or are they're asking to take it out? So what are they offering? How close are they to this?
Yep.
Hey, and Polly, I know we haven't gone through the MDA. You made so many, comments both in electronic form as well as within the document. Does the planning board need to look at that, or is that only our council? Wasn't sure about exactly the process on that one.
It's very different than the MDA that was presented to them. So by all means, they can review it and give you a recommendation about it. I think that is a good idea because that includes all the text amendments that are being proposed.
This is gonna get bogged down into a morass.
You're not on mute, McKay. So
Mac, it's going to come to us anyway. So
I wasn't intending to be on mute.
okay.
Yeah, no, but let's discuss that then. Will it be bogged down? I don't know, but it's going to come back to us no matter what, without us having any clarity if we need that. Or so I don't know, Polly. I would defer to our council then to what the right procedure is here.
It's totally within the council's purview. If you think you would benefit from, as I said earlier, legally, I think we're okay. But that just because legally you can go forward, that doesn't mean that you are prohibited from going back to the planning commission. That's totally within your purview. If you want them to see what's being proposed now, they did not see any of the text amendment changes. And if you want their input on that, then it is well within your abilities to send it back.
Thank you.
And that's the same for, this is a legislative decision. So ultimately it will be your decision. So that's something too that you need to be thinking about as you review it are you willing, is this project, it is what it is. So are you willing to make those changes to the code for the project or not? And that's something that ultimately the council has to determine.
Great, thank you. I think the council, based on our comments earlier, does want to have the planning commission take another review at their next meeting. And then that would give us an opportunity to get their recommendations again. And I actually think it makes it speed up for us, not slow down. I know that you don't feel that same way, McKay, but you know, we get another set of eyes on it. Our recommending body will take a look at this, and then you know, our next opportunity anyway to meet with you is not going to be on the 12th. It'll be sometime after that, and then the 19th is only a week after that. So I think the council should meet again, if not on May 26th, then maybe June 1st or 2nd, when we think we might be able to get perhaps all the council members back together. If the council is available, Ralph has already said he's not available on the 26th, so we're down one. And I think, I don't know how the other council members feel, but I would prefer to have everyone there. So, you know, I propose that we would come back together maybe on June 1st or 2nd.
I will.
And then what was the 19th?
That's the Planning Commission's regular monthly meeting.
Right.
Oh.
And that is when I will state that I will be unavailable on June 1st.
On June 1st?
I cannot make it.
Okay.
Me too. June 2nd's okay though.
Is
Yeah,
June
June
2nd okay?
June 2nd's okay.
Ralph, June 2nd?
Let me look at my calendar. And
Bob?
I think it is, but just give me 1 second. And
Bob, you might not know,
Bob?
but June 2nd?
I am on call that day. I may be available. If I can be available, I most certainly will.
Do you have any
I'm,
concerns?
you know, this is Phil. I'm driving. I can't look at my calendar because I'm driving, but I will find out and let you know.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I didn't realize you were back. Okay, any concerns, Bob, if we move forward with you being a question on June 2nd, but then go ahead and, you know, make that.
But let's move forward out of respect for everybody's time. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we'll try our best to make it.
Okay. All right, so that's the proposal. Planning Commission on the 19th to discuss what we've already talked about. Back to the council on June 2nd.
I would like to add a couple comments. One is, I mean, the Planning Commission has a purview, and if they're going to review the MDA, they need to review it for the parts that apply to where they're the recommending body. I don't think we want to ask them to look at the entire document, because I don't, you know, it's a big document, a lot of work's gone into it, and they are, you know, they're there specifically to look at the planning code related things. So I think, Thomas, you're gonna have to manage that.
I can do that.
They want to, you know, so that we don't get them spending 4 hours and saying they want another meeting to talk about something that's not really Planning Commission oriented. The other question I guess I have for Polly is, we noticed tonight is a public hearing, and I did dropped off for a while. Did we open it for public comment, or do we need to?
We did. Thank you. Chris was on it.
Yeah, we took care of that, Phil.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, so I think we're just at the point of where we're trying to set a schedule to continue.
So one more question on the MDA. You had, Polly, you had a lot of, again, comments. Is, and you know, I think Phil's point was, you know, the MDA in terms of the planning board, they should only be addressing the key points that they should be addressing. That makes total sense because it's a big document. But from your, you know, from your point of view, you, again, I you know, I took to heart all your comments, your questions. Do you need to have those affirmatively or at least addressed individually before you feel comfortable in your next steps from a legal standpoint? What's that look like?
Yeah, so, and I also at the my comments to the applicants. They were going to get me a written response and I haven't received that yet. I know everyone's been busy, but I was hoping I could review it and narrow down some of the issues. I think some of them can be answered very quickly. Some of them may just be different wants between the town and the applicants. And so it comes down to, are those things the town, just to kind of, the town needs to choose, the council needs to choose which way they want to go. But I think the main things for the planning commission, without going through that, I think it's a very long document. The main thing is definitely those text amendments are a big thing. So we could ask them to concentrate on that. And then maybe prior, the 19th, we can send them all the materials now. That was a big problem, was that we were working so fast to get this commission. We've been trying to accommodate. Obviously, the developers have a really tight schedule, and it's really hard to do things quickly. But we could send them everything now, and then, as we get answers or whatever, we can come up with maybe as part of an agenda or similar to what Thomas had, but focus in just on the things that are more tied to the planning commission. I think the majority of it is those text amendments is a really big difference and something they haven't seen before.
Polly, we'll have those. We worked with Chase on that all day yesterday and in part today. And so we should, he was going to try to have it out to you today. He just hasn't been able to. He'll probably have it out to you tomorrow. I think it would be worthwhile if we sat down again and went through that, because I agree there are a lot of things in there that are easily reconcilable and just questions that need clarification. And so I think it would be worthwhile to do that. And then, if you want to have the planning commission just focus on those text amendments, we can make sure that we're prepared to go over those with them. So.
And what would the date need to be that the planning commission would receive these materials? Would it be, so the 19th, the week before that's the 12th, do they need materials by the 10th?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, right. They need it as soon as possible. That was a huge issue, and one that they are absolutely right on. They received the materials very last minute. So, what I would propose, it's only 2 weeks away from now, is that we send them the current council packet so at least they can start looking through, but then ask them to focus on the text amendments initially. And then, those answers, I'm always happy to meet with the applicants about this stuff. And I've been looking forward to seeing their responses. So once I've had a chance to look at it, I think I'm happy to talk to them. But I think, trying to have stuff as close to done as possible, as soon as possible is great. But yeah, the 10th seems realistic. The 12th really seems to be the last possible date. I know there's some new exhibits that need to be done that we've talked about tonight. And maybe they're just refined. I think you have the information. They're just not responding.
Polly, can I make a recommendation? If we're asking the planning commission to focus on section 5.8 of Thomas's, basically the text amendments, and then in there is that public space 10.08.34. Wouldn't it make sense to just send them those sections if those are the sections that they're going to be reviewing and making recommendations on?
I think it's important for them to see. I mean, it's in the public domain already, so I don't see.
I'm just trying to get all I'm trying to get to is if we don't go to the planning commission and say, we need your recommendation, their recommending body, on section 5, 8, and 10.08.34, which is in that section, and it turns into this massive packet that includes everything. I just don't want to end up in a 3 or 4 hour long meeting where we're talking about some periphery issue rather than focusing on the things that I think the council is asking for direction on. All I'm saying is I think it would be better to focus on that so we can have like legitimate, real focused direction. And we can take that focused direction and work with it with the city council. Otherwise, when I talk about getting bogged down in a morass, that's what I'm worried about.
Well, I think we will be framing it in a staff report that will help the discussion. I mean, either way, it doesn't matter. They can access the whole packet tonight, right? They're going to have a copy of the 193 page. So
I guess all I'm saying is in terms of the direction that the planning commission gets from the city council on what it is that the intent of that meeting and what it is that we are doing it, what the purpose of that meeting is to focus on. I just worry if we don't have that, it's going to get unwieldy. And at least what I'm coming out of all of these discussions is that it's 5 and 8. And I think within either Thomas's 5 or 8 is that public space portion that Chris referenced just earlier. I'm just trying to keep
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk to Tony specifically about this and make sure that
Mayor, I think you're not on mute.
No, I think he just said, yeah, he's going to talk to Tony, is what I heard him say.
I'm trying to talk to you. I'm not on mute on purpose. I'm saying I would talk to Tony Matisat about what the purview is for the review. Right? I think Thomas, in his role with the planning commission, will try and keep it on course.
And Mac, if there's some way too to kind of highlight anything that's, I think as you've pointed out, not much has changed between what was presented, the concept plan that was approved, and I think you've revised the site plan. So if you can just highlight that will probably help move the conversation along so everyone can look at that and understand it as opposed to trying figuring it out on their own.
We can do that.
You're also going to do an executive summary. Is that just not going to happen now at this point? So late in the game?
No, I sent a bullet point summary of the highlights of the MDA over to Thomas, and I think Thomas used that as the basis of the discussion point. So you may or you may not have, but I did send that over to Thomas. I just figured, Paulie, between me, you, Chase, and Todd, when it came to the actual legal stuff, you didn't necessarily need an executive summary from us. And we were just going to, go through bullet point by bullet point in the agreement itself and resolve all of those. We wanted to get you on the phone. You asked for written responses. Chase is typing up all the written responses to you.
Great. No, Todd offered that, and I thought that was going to be the most efficient way. So when he asked if I wanted it just in writing, I said, that's a great idea.
Okay.
And then we can follow up on phone. So I think that's great. And if you can get the summary of the differences for the planning commission from what they saw before, I think that would help focus their discussion as well.
And McKay, that might just be a little bit of an expansion upon the executive summary you sent me. That might help. And we can talk through that.
Well, I mean, about the only thing that has changed in terms of the concept plan itself is we've gone down in density, up in amenities, up in commercial, up in cash to the city. And that would be my summary. And the concept plan, the only place that it really has changed much are in the areas where we've responded to Ryan and Tim's instruction on drainage channels and preserving those. So, but we will happily step through those items with them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you can get it to us earlier, we would appreciate it. If possible.
Yeah, we already had one planning commission resignation because they didn't get the material in time and they were tired of it.
Everything that we've turned in, we have turned in terms of our application stuff. We get our stuff in according to the notification requirements. Now, there's other information that we provide as backup, like we did today. But I think what maybe is happening is that the staff would probably like to have that information. Maybe, look, we're used to dealing with full-time staff that works full-time for a city, and bless Polly's and Thomas's heart, they don't, and they're doing a lot. And so to get, even when we get the materials to them, they've got, probably not a ton of time to be able to prepare that information for the city council. So we will try harder to, while we're meeting the noticing requirements, we'll try harder to get the information to them in advance of that, so they've got more time to be able to prepare their staff reports, because I know that it's a lot of information.
Hey, Polly, could I ask you one more question? When we get to the vote time, so to speak, say it's June 1 or whatever that date is it one vote based upon a combination of the project, the MDA? Is everything interconnected, or do we separate votes, like an initial vote on the project and then the MDA? How does that work?
Right now, I think what's being asked for is 3 actions. One would be the MDA, one would be the zone change, and one would be the letter of intent for the PID. And the MDA would have a resolution associated with it. So it would be 3 actions. I have been thinking about, just to give you a little preview of another, because a big concern was upzoning this area. And this is something we've talked about, but I wanted to just get through this meeting. But it is possible that maybe the zoning will just all be incorporated within the MDA, so that there wouldn't be a need to do a zoning ordinance, but we'll deal with that. I'll talk to the developers about that and see how we can structure that.
And is there an order to 1, 2, or 3, or 1 and 2 if we combine that? What goes first? What goes second?
I would think probably you would do the MDA first, and then the discussion, obviously, I think they all go hand in hand, as you said, but they need to be 3 separate actions. So probably you would do the MDA, the letter of intent, and the
zoning.
Any zoning change.
Thanks.
Okay, have we reached the end of our agenda for tonight?
Sounds like we have. In which case we would need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Sherry?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Chris? Chris?
Sorry, I said yes, but my mic didn't unmute, so yes.
Thank you. Bob?
Yes.
Ralph?
Definitely yes.
Thank you all for your time and effort on this. It is a big, complicated project, and we owe the community the efforts that we're putting in to make sure that we understand all the pieces of it, so that we can make the decision that's right for the town. Thanks to Todd and McKay and their team for all the patience and support through this.
We echo that, Mr. Mayor. We want to thank you guys all. I know, your point, Chris, I know that this is a special meeting and we've been on here for a very long time, and we appreciate all the time that you guys put into this. We know that it's specifically dedicated to our project, and we don't take it for granted. Want you guys to know that even when we have tense moments, we're appreciative of the effort and the time that you guys all put into this. So thank you.
And I just want to make clear too,
everyone-
that when it goes, sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead, Molly, sorry.
When it goes back to Planning Commission, it will also be on for a public hearing. So in a sense, you're sending it back for a public hearing, so we don't have to go through all and get caught up with any issues with the noticing for a public hearing. It's a continuation of the current public hearing.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay, thanks for that reminder. That's helpful. It's good to have it on the record. Thank you, Bob. Okay, well, thanks, everyone. Get some rest, and we'll be reconnecting next week for town council.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
all.
Thank you. Good night.